Chapter 1094. Everyone only felt that the world was covered in a snowy blue color and nothing else could be seen. After 3 loud bangs, the dazzling snowy blue light suddenly disappeared. The surroundings were still the same as before. Compared to before, they could not see any place that had suffered from a violent attack. They did not even feel any large fluctuations in the air. After 3 loud bangs, the snowy blue light disappeared and there was no more movement. Almost everyone did not see clearly what had happened. It was hard to imagine that Wang Qing had already made a move. However, the scream that came from Jin Tai's mouth did not seem fake. The most terrifying thing was that not only did Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi and Bai Changchun fly far away, there was also a dark red mark at the corner of their mouths. They were slowly climbing up from the ground as if they had been seriously injured. Jin Tai's golden cloud rod was broken into 2 pieces on the ground. Where did Jin Tai go after that scream? Everyone looked at Wang Qing, who had brazenly pulled out a snowy blue light. In bewilderment, a huge sword with an extraordinary aura and a strange shape stood at the place where Wang Qing had just stood. It was a full 5 meters long, sparkling and translucent snowy blue. The sword hilt was formed by 6 flying dragons, and the entire huge sword was surrounded by flowing lights. Such a huge sword? Everyone was shocked. Bai Qi and Bai Changchun, who had been injured by the sword, had solemn expressions as they looked at the sword. One look, and they could tell that this sword was extraordinary. Ing, the sound of the sword rang out, and the huge sword was slowly inserted into the ground. As the snowy blue huge sword disappeared, Wang Qing, who was standing behind the huge sword, gradually appeared in front of everyone. After the sword was inserted into the golden ground, the sword hilt, which was formed by 6 flying dragons, was just in front of Wang Qing. The eyes behind the silver mask were still indifferent. His hands were crossed on his abdomen, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. However, at this moment, he made everyone feel a huge, invisible pressure. The sect leader of the mythical fire palace, Huijun, looked at the huge sword inserted into the golden ground and was extremely excited. Wang Qing had indeed not let down his efforts. At this moment, dense dark clouds rolled in from all directions, accompanied by the sound of thunder. A majestic and vast qi floated and vibrated between heaven and earth. Everyone quickly looked around the sky, and they were all slightly shocked. This movement had already begun to form the dharma of heaven and earth, and it was obvious that someone was controlling it. Under the golden umbrella, Qingyang's eyes flashed as she looked at Yu Qianqiu. In actuality, when the furious lightning struck the immortal palace, she faintly suspected that it had something to do with Yu Qianqiu. In the end, she saw Yu Qianqiu looking around in shock, as if he didn't know what was going on either. Yu Qianqiu truly didn't know what was going on, because this commotion wasn't caused by him at all. Even if he did, with his current cultivation, he wouldn't be able to cause such a huge commotion. To be able to summon such a vast dark cloud, he was still far from being able to do so. The most important thing was that he had secretly attacked Jin Taixuan without knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. As a result, Jin Taixuan's counterattack made him understand that there were some levels of fighting that he could not intervene in with his little cultivation. He was heavily injured on the spot, but he didn't show it. Now, he was silently recovering, and there was no way he could forcefully use his cultivation to do anything. Brother Bai, could it be that you still want to put up a futile resistance? Wang Qing calmly looked at Bai Changchun and said, "The lightning that Brother Bai summoned couldn't even break through the barrier of the immortal palace. Do you really think it can do anything to me?" He also mistakenly thought that the heavenly lightning that struck the barrier was summoned by Changchun. When everyone heard this, they saw golden arcs of light flashing around by Changchun's body, faintly drawing in the majestic and vast qi between heaven and earth. At this time, the dark cloud with countless lightning snakes in the sky plunged the earth into darkness again. Bai Changchun didn't explain that he wasn't the one who caused the lightning. He just snorted and said, "Sect leader Wang Qing's sword drawing style is indeed worthy of its reputation." It can actually condense such a powerful force into a single line in an instant without any leakage. On the contrary, I feel that this trip wasn't in vain. Wang Qing said indifferently, although it's my first time meeting Brother Bai, I feel like old friends at first sight. From today onwards, the immortal world will belong to my heartless palace. I heard that Brother Bai has always been a loner. Why don't you join my heartless palace? I promise I won't restrict Brother Bai's freedom. What does Brother Bai think? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. The Heartless Palace was the #1 sect in the celestial world. Now that Wang Qing had displayed his valiant strength and killed Celestial Emperor Jin Tai, it was just as Wang Qing had said, the celestial world was indeed going to belong to the Heartless Palace. At this point, Bai Changchun shouldn't refuse such a temptation. If Wang Qing and Bai Changchun joined forces, perhaps even Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi would be in danger. Bai Qi quickly glanced at the two of them warily. Suddenly, a burst of laughter echoed throughout the ruined immortal palace. He said, "What a joke. How can the immortal world belong to your heartless palace when I'm still here? What a fool's dream." Jin Tai, Bai Qi exclaimed and looked around in surprise. Bai Changchun also looked around in shock. The others didn't see it clearly, but the two of them saw with their own eyes that Jin Tai was killed by Wang Qing's sword. How could he still be alive? There was a sudden uproar in the surroundings. Nie Xiaoqian and the others, who were secretly preparing to escape, immediately became spirited. They saw the hope of turning the tables again. Among them, Wu Xiong's face was gloomy. Ji Wu and Heir Xuejuan's faces frowned. Jin Tai's survival was beyond everyone's expectations. Even Wang Qing's usually calm eyes flashed with surprise as he looked around vigilantly. Beside Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi, a golden light shone on the ground. The well-dressed Jin Tai suddenly rose from it. He opened his hand, and the two halves of the golden cloud rod immediately fused together. In the blink of an eye, the two halves returned to their original state and flashed into Jin Tai's hand. "Are you really Jin Tai? You really didn't die?" Bai Qi was overjoyed and asked. Although the two of them were usually at odds, they always relied on and supported each other at critical moments. This was beneficial for the two of them to rule the immortal world and the netherworld. The others were also examining the new immortal Emperor Jin Tai. In the distance, Yu Qianshou revealed a thoughtful expression as he pondered about the matter of Jin Ling. "I've already cultivated the immortal golden body. It's a big joke to want to kill me. I'm just temporarily avoiding the blade." Jin Tai glanced at Bai Qi and stared at Wang Qing. He sneered and said, "Wang Qing, others don't know your details. Do you think you can fool me, who has fought with you before? Your sword drawing style consumes a lot of cultivation. After the same style is used, you need at least 6 hours to recondense your essence, qi, and spirit before you can use it again. The same style can't be used continuously. The first 5 styles of the sword drawing style are simply child's play for the 3 of us. Are you trying to delay time here? Huh, so that's how it is." Everyone was suddenly enlightened and thought that Wang Qing was going to be unlucky this time. Even Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi touched the sword mark on the obsidian light mirror and stared coldly at Wang Qing. However, Wang Qing still stood there without worry or fear. His gaze was indifferent as he said, "This is indeed a problem. The shackles of the sword drawing style made me not dare to act rashly before. I have been looking for a solution for many years. However, once I give up the powerful power of the sword drawing style, the sword drawing style becomes meaningless. Speaking of which, I have to thank the 3 of you for the fierce battle, which made Wang Qing have a new understanding in an instant. Even if you can draw the sword continuously, I want to see how many times you can withstand the consumption of the sword drawing style with your cultivation." Jin Tai pointed the golden cloud rod in his hand and said with a hideous smile, "Today, I will take your little life to correct the rules of the celestial world. I will let the world know the consequences of disrespecting the ruler as a warning to others. Why do I need to draw the sword a few more times? One sword is enough." Wang Qing said lightly. Jin Tai, I don't believe that you can really keep your golden body indestructible under the seventh style of the sword drawing style. I will wait and see. There is a seventh style of the sword drawing style. There was an uproar in the surroundings. How powerful would it be? Bai Changchun frowned slightly. Bai Chi's pupils shrank suddenly, and Jin Tai's expression was slightly stiff. Only he knew whether he could really keep his golden body indestructible or not. Brother Bai, I will ask you for the last time. Wang Qing looked at Bai Changchun calmly and said word by word, "Are you willing to join my heartless palace?" Bai Changchun, don't listen to his bewitchment. He is making a last-ditch struggle. Without waiting for Bai Changchun to answer, Qin Tai resolutely continued, "As long as you and I stand on the same side and kill this evil together, I will now guarantee in front of the world that I will let bygones be bygones for everything you have done today." He said that Wang Qing was making a last-ditch struggle, but in turn, he pulled Bai Changchun to deal with Wang Qing together. It could be said that he showed his capricious side without a doubt. Everyone couldn't help but ask themselves, how could they dare to believe such a despicable person? How can I miss the opportunity to experience the seventh style of the sword drawing style of sect leader Wang Qing? As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. Even Bai Qi looked at Bai Changchun with some surprise. He didn't expect that Bai Changchun would be so obsessed that he would believe Jin Tai's nonsense. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, Bai Changchun pointed at Jin Tai and shouted angrily, "Jin Tai, you despicable person, do you think that I am a fool who can be easily fooled? This old man will not miss the seventh style of the sword drawing style. This old man will also take your dog head in the future." The meaning of his words was very clear. He would not rely on anyone, nor would he ally with anyone. Jin Tai's expression twisted, and he immediately turned hostile and said, "You will live through today first." He secretly communicated with Bai Qi, and a black light and a golden light attacked almost at the same time, launching a sneak attack on Wang Qing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 6 consecutive sword cries seemed to combine into one. 6 silhouettes of hands grabbed the 6 dragons on the hilt of the 6 dragon snow blue sword and pulled it out at the same time. The huge sword immediately turned into 6 dazzling blue lights. 6 shadows of hands appeared in front of Wang Qing, and at the same time, they pulled out the sword. It was as if there were 6 divine dragons imprisoned in his hands, and when he waved his hands, the 6 majestic dragons immediately roared and flew out. Chapter 1095. Roar. 6 dragons roared at the same time, shaking the heaven and earth. 6 giant dragons, shining with a snowy blue light, attacked at the same time with an earth-shattering momentum. Bang! Bang! With 2 loud bangs, the black light from the obsidian light mirror was directly dispersed. The golden cloud cudgel was bounced off, and the 6 giant dragons attacked at the same time. The 2 swift sneak attacks were instantly destroyed. The 2 huge, snow-blue dragons chased after the 2 attackers in an imposing manner, as if they could devour the 2 of them in one gulp. Bai Qi and Jin Tai were shocked, and they teleported away at the same time. When they appeared again, the golden cloud cudgel was as thick as a pillar, and the obsidian light mirror was as big as a hammer. I don't believe that your broken sword can be stronger than the 10,000 swords of the demonic monarch of swords. Jin Tai's angry roar overshadowed the thunder. The 2 could become the supreme swordsmen of the immortal realm in the netherworld, so they were not cowards who could be easily scared off. Both of them shouted angrily at the same time. The golden and white silhouettes turned around and faced the 2 dragons that were chasing after them. Their clubs and hammers were smashed, and the rumbling sounds shook the heavens. The 2 men and the 2 dragons were engaged in a fierce battle. On the high platform, Wang Qing's eyes under the silver mask emitted a sharp light like a sword. His thin and long body under the wide blue robe stood straight with his hands behind his back. He hadn't moved a single step. The 4 dragons flying around him were vivid and lifelike, which shocked everyone. They didn't expect Wang Qing to be so powerful. Those with great vision would be able to see that these dragons were formed by the huge sword that had been divided into several parts. The dragon bodies that could be seen were because the sword will was so strong that it had reached the stage where the sword energy was like a rainbow and the Dharma of heaven and earth took shape. The most shocking thing was that only 2 of the 6 sword dragons could entangle the Emperor of the Underworld and the Celestial Emperor. It was really powerful. However, what surprised everyone was that Wang Qing didn't attack Bai Changchun. Even Bai Changchun felt it was strange that Wang Qing still wanted to win him over. What everyone didn't know was that Wang Qing's one-sword 6 styles had just begun to form a divine ability, and it was a bit difficult for him to use it against 3 experts at the same time. Therefore, he didn't attack Bai Changchun, but Jin Tai and Bai Qi to practice. It wouldn't be too late to attack after he had mastered it. He was certain that Bai Changchun was a proud and aloof person. If he went easy on him, Bai Changchun would definitely not join forces with the other 2 to deal with him. He only needed to buy some time to familiarize himself with him. The fierce battle in the sky did not stop. Loud noises shook the sky. The 2 flying dragons were like 2 snow blue storms, wrapping around the 2 and attacking rapidly. Jin Tai suddenly transmitted his voice. Bai Qi, since you are fast, why don't you find an opportunity to launch a sneak attack and break his sword-drawing style? By then, he will definitely die. Bai Qi glanced at Wang Qing, who was as still as a mountain, and saw that there were still 4 flying dragons circling around him. Bai Qi could not help but feel angry and annoyed. Just one of them would take a lot of effort, and now he had to deal with 5 at the same time. Wasn't he just looking for trouble? Immediately, he sneered and transmitted his voice back. Help me lure 2 flying swords away from him first. What he meant was that they would each deal with 3 flying swords, and no one would suffer a loss. Jin Tai immediately shut his mouth. If he dared to run over, he was afraid that he would not just lure 2 flying swords away, but 4 flying swords. However, Jin Tai and Bai Qi weren't to be trifled with. It was a bit of a stretch for the 2 wyverns to try and stop them. By the time the 2 gradually let go of their attacks, the 2 wyverns had already been beaten back to their original forms. With Jin Tai's cunning, he immediately realized that something was wrong. In such a situation, Wang Qing still did not release the other 4 flying swords to win. It was not that he did not want to, but that he could not. Jin Tai immediately shouted, Bai Changchun, he can't control 6 swords at the same time. Why don't you take the opportunity while we are holding him back to kill this thief? Now that things had come to this, Bai Changchun also faintly thought of this possibility. However, how could he do something like taking advantage of others' difficulties? He coldly snorted and said, Shameless! How dare you point your fingers at this old man? You! Jin Tai hatefully shut his mouth. He did not want to have another enemy now. At this time, the unmoving eyes of Wang Qing suddenly burst out with an even brighter splendor. He indifferently said, Jin Tai, I will satisfy your request. I will let you have a taste of 6 swords. The blue robe waved his large sleeves, and 2 fingers stabbed out with the driving sword technique. Roar! The 4 snow blue flying dragons shone with blue light under the inky black clouds. They roared angrily and their huge bodies wriggled. With a loud bang, they split into 2 and shot towards Jin Tai and Bai Qi. Just 1 flying dragon was not easy to deal with for the 2 of them. If they continued to fight, they would simply be courting death. Jin Tai did not expect that he would make a wrong judgment. He angrily shouted, Go! With a wave of his staff that could shake the mountains and rivers, he pushed back the entangling flying dragons and teleported away. Bai Qi also quickly escaped. Although the 6 flying dragons were strong, they did not have the nimbleness of the flying swords. They were too much of a burden. Before they could catch up to the 2, they immediately returned and flew around Wang Qing. No one thought that this would be the result. Bai Qi and Jin Tai were actually chased away by Wang Qing. Such a subversive thing was hard for everyone to accept. The people of the Immortal Palace were terrified. They did not think that the Immortal Emperor would abandon them and run away. Nie Shaoqian flashed to the side of Yu Qianshou and Qing Yang and anxiously said, Quickly, Follow mother. When a tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Even Jintai ran away. Where else can we go? Qingyang self-deprecatingly sneered. Looking around, they found that the surrounding people were looking at them with evil intentions. Fortunately, Jintai and Bai Qi were still alive and did not see the final result. For the time being, no one dared to do anything to them. Most importantly, at this time, Wang Qing was completely focused on Bai Changchun. He did not care about the remaining people of the Immortal Palace. The sky was dark, and the clouds were filled with lightning. Let's go to the underworld. There are many experts there. It is the territory of the Emperor of the Underworld. We still have a chance to make a comeback. Nie Xiaoqian cautiously looked around and whispered. Qingyang frowned and closed the golden umbrella in her hand. She returned it to Yu Qianshou and said, "You have the Immortal Palace's golden umbrella. Plus, you have enmity with the Heartless Palace. They won't let you go. Come with us to the underworld." Yu Qianshou held the golden umbrella and looked at Bai Changchun. He slightly shook his head and said, "It is not the end yet. I still want to see how it will turn out. If you don't leave now, you won't be able to leave when the outcome is decided." Qingyang reminded, "It's fine if he doesn't want to leave." Nie Xiaoqian directly dragged Qingyang away. She couldn't care less about Yu Qianshou's life at this time of great change. Pulling Qingyang to Ji Wu's side, Nie Xiaoqian clasped her hands together and said, "Immortal Empress, please come with us to the underworld to meet with the Immortal Emperor." Ji Wu finally had a chance to escape from Jin Tai's evil claws. How could she take the initiative to be trampled on? She coldly shouted, "He left me behind and ran away. Is there a need for me to stick to him?" Nie Xiaoqian paused. She naturally knew that Ji Wu didn't want to marry the Immortal Emperor. If there was a chance, Ji Wu would definitely not leave with her. At this moment, she couldn't use force. She could only say, "Immortal Empress, take care." She grabbed Qingyang and the 6 great commanders and quickly left. It was just as Lady Qingyang had said, when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the disciples of the Immortal Palace saw that their masters were either killed or fled. Those with higher cultivations who could keep up with them also ran away, while those with lower cultivations immediately scattered in all directions. The huge Immortal Palace collapsed in an instant. However, the strange thing was that the External Affairs Commander, Wu Xiong, didn't leave with Nie Xiaoqian's group. Instead, he flashed to the top right of Wang Qing and solemnly said, "Big brother, when the underworld found out that you were going to cut off all means of retreat during Jin Tai's wedding, they immediately made preparations in advance. When they received the news of Jin Tai's defeat, they immediately attacked the Dark North Royal Palace. Who would have thought that Bai Qi would also be here and would be defeated by you together with Jin Tai? This is good. We don't need to be afraid of their alliance. You alone can deal with both of them. Big brother, you should immediately go to the underworld and help father and auntie." As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Wu Xiong actually called Wang Qing big brother. Who were their father and aunt? Why did they want to attack the Dark North Imperial Palace? Could it be that Wu Xiong and Wang Qing were brothers? Could it be that someone had been accumulating power to overthrow Jin Tai and Bai Qi? "I know what to do. Get out of the way." Wang Qing shouted. He stared at the slightly surprised Bai Changchun and said word by word, "Brother Bai, Wang Qing will give you one last chance. Are you going to join my Heartless Palace or not?" The flying dragons flying around him became more and more ferocious. Wu Xiong frowned and quickly dodged to the side. He went to the side to appease his shocked subordinates and ordered them to go to the various mountains of the Paradise Wonderland to collect the wealth left by the Immortal Palace. Many people were envious when they heard this, but most of them came alone. Moreover, no one dared to compete with these 2 brothers for the wealth left by the Immortal Palace. This old man is not a person who fawns on the rich and powerful. Bai Changchun slowly floated into the air and flatly refused. This old man wants to see how powerful the 7th move of the sword-drawing style is. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. They all felt that this Bai Changchun was a little tactless. Yu Qianshou almost fainted when he heard this. This old man is really crazy. You can't even withstand the sixth move of the sword-drawing style, and you want to withstand the seventh move? Didn't you see that Bai Qi and Jin Tai were scared away? Brother Bai, you are digging your own grave. Wang Qing said calmly. That's not necessarily true. Bai Changchun, who was in the air, said in a cadence. Your sixth move is superior in terms of purity and one. The explosive speed is so fast that I can't neutralize the power of that move with my current understanding. If you can use the sixth move now, this old man can only run away. As for the seventh move, it is indeed several times more powerful than the sixth move. Unfortunately, it is a little mixed. With this old man's understanding of power, I don't think it could do anything to me. Since I can't make you change your mind, what's the point of keeping you alive? The 6 flying snow blue dragons around Wang Qing immediately roared in the sky. Clap. Bai Changchun clapped his palms together in the air and closed his eyes. His lips moved, and his green robe fluttered in the wind. A sonorous sound flowed slowly between heaven and earth. Ignore the common people, ignore the ghosts and gods, and don't touch karma. Close your eyes, cover your ears, and dry your heart. Only seek the dragon crouching technique. Chapter 1096. The bleak tone in his voice revealed his persistent pursuit of endless bitter cultivation. The road was long and arduous, and he would continue to search for it. The mood in just 2 sentences made everyone's mind slightly stunned, and they looked back and sighed with emotion on the path of cultivation in this life. As the words flowed, the clouds in all directions moved, and the rolling dark clouds in the sky surged rapidly. Thunder rumbled one after another, and the momentum from all directions surged and condensed towards Bai Changchun, who was floating in the air. A mighty heaven and earth dharma idol seemed to want to help him. Close your eyes, cover your ears, dry your heart, and only seek the dragon's subduing technique. I want to see how Brother Bai will subdue Wang Qing's 6 dragons' snow blue sword. Wang Qing snorted, waved the big sleeves of his blue robe, and stabbed towards Bai Changchun with 2 fingers. In an instant, the sky and the earth changed color. The 6 dragons roared loudly and shook the sky. Their huge snow-blue bodies, which were like rainbows, smashed through the air and shot towards Bai Changchun, who closed his eyes and put his palms together. The rolling and powerful airwaves immediately forced the onlookers to retreat again, not daring to get close. Bai Changchun's eyes suddenly opened, and his palms that were put together loosened. He waved the big sleeves of his green robe, and his whole body soared into the sky with a whoosh. He shot straight into the sky with a stream of light, and instantly rushed into the rolling dark clouds with bursts of thunder. At the moment when the dark clouds were smashed open, countless thunderbolts could be seen crisscrossing and shining like a net. The 6 dreamy flying dragons, shining with snow-blue light, all turned and chased after him. The 6 dragons surrounded and soared into the sky, and their momentum was astonishing. Bang! With a loud bang, the dark clouds in the sky were dyed into a large area of green light by the sudden burst of thunderbolts. Thousands of thunderbolts fell at the same time, and with a boom, they concentrated on the heads of the 6 flying dragons, causing the huge bodies of the 6 flying dragons to freeze. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They could feel the electric currents spreading through the air, and the hairs on their bodies stood on end without being able to suppress it. Wang Qing's eyes suddenly narrowed. He could feel that the thunderbolt that descended this time was obviously much more powerful than the thunderbolt that struck the immortal palace earlier. He couldn't help but ask himself, could it be that this old thing has been hiding his strength all along? Yu Qianshou, on the other hand, was left speechless. He realized that the old man was much stronger than him when it came to controlling thunder and lightning. He recalled the legend of the old man being able to capture thunder and lightning and use it as the heavenly sword. He had thought that was just a flattering compliment from others who were intimidated by the old man's despotic power. But now, it seemed that the old man was a true expert in controlling thunder and lightning. Just as he was about to take a good look at the technique of controlling lightning, a few people suddenly appeared. At first glance, Ji Wu was supporting Immortal Crocodile and Lu Yanqing to his side. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but glance at his own Immortal Emperor-style golden robe, then at Ji Wu's golden robe, and found that the two of them standing together were a little too eye-catching. After Ji Wu noticed his actions, she also looked back and forth between them. The expression on her face instantly froze, and some improper thoughts suddenly popped up in her mind. Is this really fate? Crocodile Xuejuan and Lu Yanqing also found that their clothes were too appropriate, and they couldn't help but look at each other. At this moment, a huge electric net was suddenly thrown out of the dark clouds. In an instant, the 6 wyverns that were slightly stiff in the air were all caught in one net. At the same time, they were firmly trapped in the electric net. The electric net was connected to thousands of electric currents hanging down from the dark clouds. Obviously, it was maintaining the strong, binding force of the electric net on the wyverns. Everyone was shocked by the scene that appeared in the air. It was a little too spectacular. Could it be that the 7th move of Wang Qing's sword-drawing style was broken just like that? The 6 wyverns struggled violently in the huge electric net. Thousands of electric currents hanging down from the dark clouds became thicker, and the entire huge electric net gradually became thicker. It seemed that the net was trying to trap the 6 wyverns. I didn't expect your sword to already have a sword spirit in it. No wonder you can gather such a strong sword essence and show off the power of your sword-drawing style. When I use the power of thunder to destroy the sword spirit, let's see how powerful Sect leader Wang Qing's sword-drawing style is. There was a sonorous snort in the air that overshadowed the thunder. The Sect leader of Mythical Fire Palace, Huijun, suddenly looked at Wang Qing nervously. In the air, Bai Changchun broke through the dark clouds. His whole body was covered with shining green and white electric currents. Thousands of strands of thunder and lightning hung down from the dark clouds and connected to his back. In his hand, he held a huge sword that was tens of meters long, made of powerful electric currents. He directly shot it towards the 6 wyverns trapped in the electric net below. It was as if he was going to slay the dragons with the heavenly sword. Everyone who looked up to the sky sucked in a breath of cold air. They were all shocked. This by Changchun was too exaggerated. He actually used the thunderbolt as a sword to slay the dragons. It turned out that fighting could be done this way. Naturally, Wang Qing would not sit back and watch Bai Changchun destroy the sword spirit in his sword. He waved his blue robe and quickly activated the newly mastered sword technique. The 6 trapped wyverns suddenly charged in all directions. The entire electric net expanded rapidly. Bai Changchun, who was pulling the thunder and lightning down, waved the long sword in his hand. In the air, thousands of thunderbolts struck the bodies of the 6 trapped wyverns. The 6 wyverns trembled and were immediately pulled back by the electric net. Bai Changchun, who had already rushed above the electric net, raised the heavenly sword in his hand like a god. He aimed at one of the wyverns and was about to kill it without mercy. Wang Qing's cold snort was filled with anger. He made a sword gesture in the big sleeve of his blue robe, and the 6 flying dragons immediately showed their original forms. The 6 snow-blue long swords burst out with flowing light, and they all slipped out of the electric net in an instant. They flashed and flew around Wang Qing rapidly. Dang dang, 6 crisp sounds, and the 6 swords combined into one. The snow-blue giant sword was once again inserted in front of Wang Qing. Wang Qing's aura suddenly converged and condensed. Bai Changchun, who was holding the heavenly sword, was slightly startled. He felt that this restrained aura was a bit similar to the 6 style, sword-drawing style. After pondering for a moment, he remembered that 6 hours had passed and immediately understood the reason. The thunder and lightning that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. Bai Changchun turned into a flowing light and suddenly disappeared into the dark clouds. A voice that was getting farther and farther away came from afar. Wang Qing, it's not that I can't defeat you, but I want to break your 6 style, sword-drawing style. Otherwise, it will leave a shackle on my path of cultivation that will be difficult to break. Let's part ways for now. We'll meet again in the future." As the voice faded away, the dark clouds that had gathered in the sky also gradually dissipated. The sun had already set, and at this moment, it was a night sky that was filled with stars. The surging murderous aura in the surroundings had also disappeared. Wang Qing did not refute Bai Changchun's words. Instead, he stared at the six-dragon blue sword in front of him for a long time. He was fully aware that his cultivation was slightly higher than Bai Changchun's, but far lower than Jin Tai and Bai Qi's. The reason why he could scare off the two was that he relied on the sword-drawing style with the help of this divine sword. However, the level of one's cultivation was not the deciding factor in a fight. The key was whether one's methods could restrain one's opponent. Though his sword-drawing style could restrain Jin Tai and Bai Qi, with Bai Changchun's endless methods, it was possible that Bai Changchun could defeat him, as Bai Changchun said. The leaders of the various sects looked at Wang Qing speechlessly. Although it was a great battle and the entire celestial palace was destroyed, no one could tell who won and who lost. On the surface, it seemed that Wang Qing had won, but was he really the final winner? Bai Changchun had said before he fled that he could defeat Wang Qing. Based on that person's proud and aloof character, he would not boast about it, and the methods he used were indeed convincing. At the same time, Jin Tai and Bai Qi did not die. They just escaped. With the power of the Emperor of the Underworld and their high cultivation, it was entirely possible for them to make a comeback. Unless it was really, as Wu Xiong had said before, that their father and aunt, whose authenticity was unknown, could conquer the Underworld royal palace. That meant that the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi's power in the Underworld, had been completely defeated. At that time, Bai Qi and Jin Tai would lose their great power, and there was Wang Qing here who could suppress the two of them. That would be the real time to determine the winner and loser. The sect masters were at a loss. If Wang Qing gave them orders, should they listen? If they didn't, Wang Qing would not be soft-hearted. Listen, what if Jin Tai regained his power in the celestial world? Yu Qianqiu, who was in the distance, was filled with resentment. He did not expect that a dark horse like Wang Qing would appear in the end. His relationship with the Heartless Palace was too good. If the Heartless Palace gained power, they would definitely not forget him, and that Wu Xiong would not treat him well. What made Yu Qianqiu the most speechless was still Bai Changchun. He had hoped that Bai Changchun would show off his invincible might and slaughter Wang Qing. But who would have thought that this old fellow had such a personality? Not only did he say that he had a way to defeat Wang Qing, but he actually threw up halfway through. He came and went as he pleased. The key was what he should do next. After some hesitation, a look of heartache flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. His eyes inadvertently fell on Lu Yanqing. In the end, he could not bear to see her suffer with Ji Wu and the others. After all, she was someone he brought from the human world. He frowned and whispered, "Shouldn't you go back with me?" Lu Yanqing glanced at Ji Wu and Xuejuan. She knew that they would not have a good time in the future. If she followed them, she would become a burden to them. So she silently nodded to Yu Qianqiu, agreeing to go back with him. Yu Qianqiu grabbed her hand. He wanted to find a place to teleport away, while Wang Qing and the others were still not paying attention to him. Unexpectedly, Xuejuan reached out and grabbed his other hand as soon as he grabbed Lu Yanqing. "Old monster, what are you doing? Stop fooling around. Let's run for our lives." Yu Qianqiu looked back at him in surprise. Xuejuan held his hand tightly and did not let go. He said in a deep voice, "Do you think Ji Wu and I can escape? That's why. Let's take advantage of the fact that they haven't reacted yet and run as far as we can. Let go of her." Yu Qianqiu lowered his voice and waved his hand. Ji Wu also looked at Xuejuan with some confusion. Why was he still pestering Yu Qianqiu at this time? Xuejuan said with a ferocious face, "Yu Qianqiu, with Ji Wu's cultivation, she can't escape. What makes you think you can escape with Miss Lu? You scoundrel, what you said before about not being able to take us away must be a lie. I can let bygones be bygones, but now I only ask you one thing. Will you take us with you?" Chapter 1097. With my weak cultivation, I don't even have the qualifications to carry the Celestial Empress shoes. How would I be able to bring the two of you along? Yu Qianqiu bitterly smiled as if he was praising me. Jiwu listened to Yi Shuejun's words and looked at Yu Qianqiu thoughtfully. However, hearing Yi Shuejun's words, she was also a prideful person. She had never done such a thing before. She immediately said with a cold face, "Brother Yi, we will find a way to leave by ourselves. There is no need to beg others." Yu Qianqiu nodded and shook his hand. Yi Shuejun tightened his grip and said, "Yu Qianqiu, if you don't take us with you, don't even think about leaving." Then, he looked at Wang Qing and the others threateningly, as if he would call for help at any time. "Old monster, you rely on women to carry you to the sky. How dare you threaten me? Are you tired of living?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and looked at Wang Qing. He sneered, "Shout as much as you want. Let's see if I am unlucky or you two are unlucky. I promise you two will die before me." Things had come to this point. He was not afraid of this kind of threat. In the past, he was worried about the Immortal Palace. Now that the Immortal Emperor had run away and the Immortal Palace had collapsed, he had a grudge against the Heartless Palace. Even if he bowed his head and admitted his mistake, the Heartless Palace would not let him go. There was no need to pretend to be a coward. "Brother Yi, let's go," Jiwu said with a gloomy face. She did not want to be bullied by this villain. "I am a useless person. It doesn't matter if I die, but sister Yi Shuejun stared at Yu Qianqiu and said sternly, "This person has ruined your reputation in the human world. When you were injured and unconscious, he took advantage of you. How can you let him escape easily after taking advantage of you?" As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked at the same time. Lu Yanqing carefully peeked at Yu Qianqiu, as if she wanted to see if he was telling the truth. Ji Wu froze as if she had been struck by lightning. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with a trembling body and said, "What did you do to me?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He did not expect Yu Shuejun to bring up this matter. Yu Shuejun promised not to tell anyone about it. Although he knew that promises were the most unreliable thing, he always thought that Yu Shuejun would care about Ji Wu's reputation and would keep it to himself. Who knew? Yu Shuejun. In fact, Yu Shuejun did not want to do this, but the situation had reached this point. No matter how much Ji Wu valued her reputation, he could not be impulsive like her and watch her die. Now that there was no place for the two of them in the underworld and immortal underworld, their last hope could only be pinned on this elusive kid. In short, for Yi Shuejun, he owed Ji Wu too much. At this point, he had to save Ji Wu's life first. Based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu after spending some time with him, this kid was basically evil. The only thing he could do to him was probably women. He did not bet wrong. The arrogant guy was pinched on the spot, and he gave in immediately. Yu Qianqiu looked at Ji Wu with a smile and said, "Don't listen to the old monster. I dare not do anything to you. Don't you know your own body? That it's too dangerous here. It's not the time to discuss these things. Let's find a way to leave here first. Old monster, come with me under the cover of the night." Ji Wu was muttering that her body had never been penetrated by a man. Who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu's attitude had changed so drastically? Her heart sank. Shuejun, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He grabbed Ji Wu, who was in a daze, and grabbed Yu Qianqiu with one hand. The few of them dashed towards the rocky valleys in the forest below. However, as soon as they moved, they immediately attracted the attention of others. Immediately, someone snorted coldly. "You guys still want to run? Yu Qianqiu, it's time for us to settle our scores." Wu Xiong led a few people to quickly chase after them. In the end, a group of people spread out a net and searched everywhere, but they did not find anyone. On the other side, Wang Qing had already put away the six-dragon snow-blue sword and rushed to the depths of the starry night sky. It seemed that he was going in the direction of the underworld. The leaders of the various sects looked at each other and knew that the real key battle to determine the outcome was probably still in the underworld. Then, they all dispersed and quickly rushed back to their respective sects to make arrangements. In the past, even at night, the Paradise Wonderland was shining with colorful neon lights. It was a day without night. Now it was pitch black. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Under the stars, the dilapidated and decadent immortal palace glowed with a dark yellow luster. It was no longer glorious. Everywhere, Wu Xiong's subordinates searched the entire paradise wonderland for the treasures left behind by the immortal palace. No one knew if this place could return to its former glory. In the underground base of the hero army of the realm of gods, Yi Jun and Lu Yanqing looked around. They did not understand where Yu Qianqiu had brought them. Ji Wu's expression was a little dull. Yu Qianqiu quickly said a few words to Zhang Peng, who had rushed over. He turned around and spread his hands. Okay, you are safe for the time being. The people from the immortal and underworld should not be able to come here in a short time. Remember not to run around. Otherwise, don't blame me if you encounter trouble. I knew you had a backup plan. Yi Jun clicked his tongue. His whole body seemed to relax. He looked around and asked, "What is this place?" "The realm of gods. The people in this area are all my people. Listen to their arrangements. I still have things to deal with now." Yu Qianqiu pointed to a few people and said to Zhang Peng, "I'll leave them to you." Zhang Peng had just received the order when Ji Wu suddenly let out an incomparably sharp scream that pierced everyone's eardrums. She suddenly grabbed Yu Qianqiu's chest with lightning speed and said in a stern voice, "What did you do to me?" Zhang Peng looked at his master weakly. Lu Yanqing looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange expression. Yi Jun looked a little embarrassed. Yu Qianqiu held her hand and smiled awkwardly. "I really didn't do anything to you. I just hugged you to save you when you were unconscious. I really didn't do anything else. Let go. I have to hurry to save people, or else it will be too late." Slap. Ji Wu suddenly slapped Yu Qianqiu. The slap was extremely loud, and everyone present was stunned. Ji Wu grabbed him crazily and hissed, "I don't believe it. Slap. Slap." Yu Qianqiu was angry. He immediately retaliated with 2 slaps. Ji Wu staggered and covered her face. Yu Qianqiu pointed at her and said angrily, "Bitch, you are now a chicken in distress. Do you think you are the golden phoenix of the immortal palace? I'll tell you the truth. I touched your ass. No matter where on your body, I touched you. I have already slept with you. Even if you take off your clothes, you're only 2 pieces of meat. Do you think you are a treasure? If it weren't for the fact that I have slept with you, you would still be trapped in the heaven and earth universe formation waiting to die. Bastard, how dare you slap me in the face, bitch?" Yu Qianqiu spouted a series of vicious words. He had no time to recall what happened in the past with her. He left the dumbfounded people and disappeared in the hallucinatory Immortal City's World Chamber of Commerce. Yu Qianqiu directly appeared in the hall on the first floor. He waved to the people in the hall with a sullen face and said, "Everyone, gather in the big conference room immediately. Hurry, hurry, hurry." After saying hurry 3 times, he turned into a stream of light and flew up the stairs. He shouted at everyone to gather quickly. Everyone hurriedly packed up the things that could be taken away. Before Yu Qianqiu went to the Immortal Palace, he had specially gathered everyone to make arrangements. If there was an accident, they would move together. It could be said that they had long been prepared. Now that he was in such a hurry, it was obvious that an accident had really happened. The atmosphere in the building immediately became tense. On the 22nd floor, Yu Qianqiu quickly knocked on the doors of the women and asked everyone to quickly gather in the big conference room downstairs. The women were first surprised by his gorgeous clothes. Then they quickly packed up the things that could be taken away. Wei Chunqiu quickly came over and was also stunned when she saw the golden robe on him. She then asked what happened. Heartless Palace's Sect Master Wang Qing went crazy and defeated Jintai and Bai Qi. The immortal world is about to change. We must leave immediately. What? Wang Qing defeated Jintai and Bai Qi? Wei Chunqiu was shocked and said, "When did Wang Qing become so powerful? How is Demingluan?" Demingluan is fine. He has already escaped to the netherworld with Jintai and Bai Qi. Quickly call Senior Yun to gather in the big conference room downstairs. As Yu Qianqiu spoke, he had already rushed to the door of the room whereby Sujin was cultivating. He directly pushed open the door. only to see Bai Sujin, who was sitting cross-legged, slowly opening her beautiful eyes. Seeing him, she also couldn't help but look at the golden robe on his body. A faint smile appeared on her face, and she said, "Why are you dressed like this?" Yu Qianzhou's anxious footsteps immediately slowed down. He lightly walked in front of her and stretched out his hand. "There's some trouble. It's not good to stay here anymore. We can talk about the details later. I will bring you to another place to continue cultivating." Bai Sujin nodded her head. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask anything unnecessary. She believed that he would definitely tell her what he should tell her. She stretched out her hand and stood up. The two of them held hands and walked out. Coincidentally, they bumped into Wei Chunxiu and Yun Peng, who were coming down from the rooftop. Yu Qianzhou said, "Let's go." The four of them quickly rushed downstairs. In the big conference room, everyone had already arrived before the four of them arrived. However, this was the first time everyone had seen Bai Sujin. Seeing the luxuriously dressed Yu Qianzhou holding hands with her in public, the others were a little curious, while the expressions of the girls were a little unnatural. Now is not the time to explain too much. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand, and everyone disappeared. They appeared in the underground space of the Netherworld Palace in Utopia, which was a copy of the East Holy Land. Then, their vision blurred, and the scene changed again. They had already arrived at the underground base of the Divine Ruin Realm. This was the first time Wei Chunxiu and Yun Peng had experienced such an incredible teleportation, and they couldn't help but look at each other. However, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand at Lu Yanqing, who was not far away, and said, "Tell everyone about the great changes that have happened in the Immortal Palace. Otherwise, everyone will be confused." Chapter 1098. The lords of the various countries and Lu Yanqing were all old acquaintances, so they did not stand on ceremony. They surrounded her and asked what was going on, but Lu Yanqing was really not an expert at telling stories. She had told such a good topic like a piece of wood, but such a shocking change still caused everyone to boo again and again. Especially after hearing about Bai Changchun's feat, they were excited and emotional. There was also some pride in it. They all lamented that the #1 expert who once deterred the world was still as powerful as before in the immortal world. Back then, he was looking down on the world, but now he was looking down on the 3 realms. The distance between them and Bai Changchun had not shortened. Instead, it was getting further apart. Among the crowd, the most melancholy was Nongzhu. Nongzhu's nostalgic expression was a little lost. Although she was Bai Changchun's good friend, she really could not catch up with Bai Changchun anymore. Could they still sit and chat like they used on Abedian Island? Nongzhu smiled bitterly and shook her head. Yun Peng and Wei Chunxiu, along with several women, were also listening to Lu Yanqing's story. Yu Qianzhou and Zhang Peng were constantly discussing the arrangements for these people, especially Bai Sujin's cultivation place. Ji Wu, who almost overturned the entire underground base after Yu Qianzhou left, was finally persuaded by Yishu Eduan. After learning the truth from Yishu Eduan and remembering that she was still a virgin, she believed Yu Qianzhou's words were said out of anger. However, after learning that Yu Qianzhou had spanked her, she gritted her teeth in shame and annoyance, but she did not lose her temper in public. However, when others learned that the woman in the golden phoenix robe was the wife left behind by immortal Emperor Jin Tai when he escaped, and looked at Yu Qianzhou's dragon robe, everyone felt that Yu Qianzhou had abducted Jin Tai's wife. After the discussion was over, Yu Qianzhou looked around and suddenly realized that something was missing. He walked to the side of the women and asked, "Where's that girl, Lu'er?" The women looked at Wei Chunxiu and said, "Her grandfather took her away." "So what if he's taken away? Why are you looking at him?" Yu Qianzhou stroked his chin and muttered to himself. Ziyi, who had changed to a new environment and had something to play with, excitedly came over and snitched on Yu Qianzhou. Lu'er's grandfather knows Bat King Wei. Bat King Wei seems to be quite afraid of Lu'er's grandfather. He doesn't even dare to raise his head after being scolded. On the other side, Wei Chunxiu's face immediately darkened. "What a talkative girl. What are you talking about?" Ziyi stuck out her bright red tongue and shut up. Was there such a thing? Yu Qianqiu walked to Wei Chuanqiu's side with an annoyed expression and asked suspiciously, Bat King Wei, what is going on? Wei Chuanqiu shook her head at first and didn't want to say anything, but when she saw Bai Sujin and Yun Peng looking at her curiously, she immediately said with a wry smile, It's not good to let too many people know about this. Just the four of us. Let's find a quiet place to talk slowly. No problem. Follow me. Yu Qianqiu led the few of them into the depths of the underground base's passageways. They turned left and right and randomly found a secluded room. After they entered, they even laid down a soundproof barrier. In the room, Wei Chuanqiu's gaze swept across the few of them. After a moment of hesitation, she slowly said, Actually, Luer's grandfather is the elder who told me about Zhang, Yi, and Ming's past. It's him? That old man who sold snacks in the hallucinatory immortal city was actually the mysterious elder you spoke of? Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in surprise and exchanged a glance with Yun Peng. Bai Sujin was a little confused, but she liked peace and wasn't the kind of woman who would get to the bottom of things. He sold snacks in the hallucinatory immortal city? Wei Chuanqiu was startled and immediately said with some remorse and self-blame, That's right. He should have changed his appearance and came out to travel. When he barged into the World Commerce Association to find Luer, I didn't recognize him. It was only when he warned me to warn you not to approach Luer in the future that I recognized him. So he had long been to the hallucinatory immortal city, but I didn't pay him a visit. It's really a sin. Warn me? F***CK. It was clearly his granddaughter who was pestering me. Okay? Yu Qianqiu sneered a few times. Then he changed the topic and said, I say, Bat King Wei, just who is this old man? I see that you seem to take him seriously. Could he be very powerful? Even the demon god has to respectfully call him senior when he sees him. Do you think he's powerful or not? Bat King Wei's gaze turned to Bai Sujin and said with a solemn expression, The reason why Su Zhen and I could have the opportunity to cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra that Tai Shu Zheng left behind was because we met him by chance. He felt that we were fated, so he pointed out Tai Shu Zheng's secluded cultivation place to me. That was how I found the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra that Tai Shu Zheng left behind. 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra? Yun Peng was startled, his pair of white eyebrows wrinkled as he said, In that case, you went into hiding to cultivate because you obtained the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. His tone seemed to be a little unhappy. Hee. Don't misunderstand. I didn't mean to hide it from you. It's just that Senior Mu told me not to let others know about the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. I also know that this thing is very important, so naturally, Wei Chuanqiu gritted his teeth and pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said, If I didn't meet this bastard, I wouldn't have broken my promise to Senior Mu. Yu Qianqiu didn't care about his words. Instead, he took a deep breath and said, A person that even the demon god has to respect, doesn't that mean his cultivation is even higher than the demon gods? I didn't think that there was such a powerful person in the immortal world. Why haven't I heard of him before? I wonder where I can find him. If I have the chance, I must pay a visit to such a person. Wei Chuanqiu muttered, It's not certain whether his cultivation is higher than the demon gods, but in terms of qualifications and experience, he is definitely stronger than the demon god. He has always stood aloof from worldly affairs, so it's not strange that you haven't heard of him. In fact, there aren't many people who know of his existence. As for you wanting to pay a visit to him, I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Back then, I accidentally entered his territory and saw him. Later, when I wanted to go back to the place I entered to pay a visit to him, I found that I couldn't find the way. Maybe I remember the wrong place. According to what you said, it's very likely that the place he lives in is another world. You accidentally entered the passageway, and then the passageway closed. Naturally, you can't find a way back in. With his current experience, Yu Qianqiu came to a very certain conclusion. He then asked, Where's the place you first entered? The passageway in that place should open again. If there's a chance, I must go take a look. Wei Chuanqiu recalled and said hesitantly, I'm not sure whether it's another world or not, because when I entered, I didn't feel the transition of the passageway between the two worlds. Back then, I went to the ancient forest of the Wood Fairy province to look for something. In the end, I had a conflict with the tree spirits in the forest. At that time, I couldn't fight against the tree spirits and was chased everywhere. I accidentally entered another world and met Senior Moo by chance. That place is called Wood Killer Sea. There are all kinds of vibrant plants everywhere. It's really a relaxing place. It's the most suitable place to live in seclusion. The Wood Fairy Province, one of the 13 great immortal provinces in that ancient forest. Yu Qianqiu pondered and nodded slightly. He had heard of it before. It seemed that the Immortal Palace had always been in control of that area. Normally, they wouldn't let anyone disturb them. They said that they didn't invade the tree spirits there. Some people had long felt that it wasn't Jin Tai's style. However, most of the sects didn't have any interest in that place, so no one paid too much attention. Now, it seemed that there was something hidden there. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but wonder if Jin Tai also knew that mysterious Senior Moo. Would Killer see? Yu Qianqiu muttered softly. Bat King Wei, do you think that Senior Moo could be a tree spirit that is cultivated for many years? Otherwise, why would he live in a place with Moo in his name? In that environment, I'm afraid it's not a coincidence. Wei Chunxiu immediately said disdainfully. According to what you said, that Jin Tai's surname is Jin, and he lives in a big golden palace. Doesn't that make him a gold demon? Senior Moo is definitely not a plant spirit or something like that. He seems to have cultivated some kind of wood elemental magic art. Jin Tai? Yu Qianqiu cried out in surprise. He was just wondering if Jin Tai was acquainted with Senior Moo when Wei Chunxiu mentioned Jin Tai. After hearing Wei Chunxiu's words, he immediately thought of something between the two. After combining the cause and effect, his mind spun a few times, and he said with some bewilderment, could it be that Senior Moo is a wood spirit? Wood spirit? What do you mean? Wei Chunxiu asked in surprise. Yin Peng and Bai Sujin also looked at him in confusion. I can't explain it clearly. I'm just guessing. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and his eyes flickered. They waited for a while, but he still didn't come back to his senses. Yin Peng suddenly interrupted and asked, since someone from the Netherworld dares to attack the Dark Imperial Palace, they must have something to rely on. Well, the Great Bright will be in danger if it follows Jin Tai and Bai Qi to the Netherworld? Yu Qianqiu raised his head slightly. This was really hard to say. It was probably going to be quite dangerous. If an expert like Jin Tai Bai Qi were to fight, it would be very difficult for someone with the cultivation of the Great Bright Will to block it. Wei Chunqiu was also surprised when he heard this. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and said anxiously, why is the Great Bright Will still following Jin Tai? Jin Tai is not a good person. From the incident at the Immortal Palace, it can be seen that he doesn't treat his subordinates as human beings. He can send his subordinates to their deaths at any time. No, we can't let him follow Jin Tai anymore. Yu Qianqiu, send the two of us out now. We're going to the Netherworld to find him. Yin Peng also made a heavy yin sound, expressing his agreement. Hearing the two of them say this, Yu Qianqiu blamed himself in his heart. Why didn't he notice the Great Bright Wheel's head at that time? Otherwise, he could have secretly sent a voice transmission to ask him to stay and follow him. He reckoned that the Great Bright Wheel saw that the situation wasn't clear yet and wanted to follow Jin Tai to take a look. However, once the Great Bright Wheel realized that the situation wasn't right, it would mean that Jin Tai and Bai Qi's forces had completely collapsed. At that time, it would be hard to say if the Great Bright Wheel could leave Jin Tai and the others. Even if he could leave, as one of Jin Tai's 6 great commanders, the people from the Heartless Palace would definitely not let him go. At that time, the Immortal Realm and the Netherworld would definitely send people to hunt down the Great Bright Will. Thinking about how the Great Bright Will had helped him many times, he couldn't ignore this friendship. Otherwise, he would lose his foundation as a human. He couldn't lose this little bit of conscience. Yu Qianqiu's face turned serious and said, leave this matter to me. Even if he overturns the Netherworld and turns it into a pot of porridge, I, Yu Qianqiu, will definitely find a way to bring him back. Chapter 1099. You alone. Yin Peng was a little hesitant. It was not that he did not believe in Yu Qianzhou's determination, but Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was too worrying. Could he bring the great Ming Wheel back in such a chaotic situation? Wei Chunqiu's words were much more direct. She said bluntly, "Can you do it with your little cultivation? Why don't you bring the two of us along? I'll go check out the situation first. If I need the two of you, I'll immediately call for your help." That's it. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said, "Zhang Peng is my disciple, a trustworthy person. He is in charge here. If there is anything you need, you can ask him for help. I will go to the underworld now." Before the two of them could say anything, he had already disappeared from where he stood. Wei Chunqiu couldn't hear him even if he wanted to stomp his feet and curse. Yu Qianzhou appeared in the valley at the foot of the hallucinatory Immortal City's World Chamber of Commerce. There was no lack of broken rocks and broken beams in the surroundings. There were even trees that had been smashed to the side. Lifting his head to look at the mountain peak, he saw that the World Commerce Association, which had been in the limelight for a period of time in the illusory Immortal City, had already collapsed. At this moment, there was still a raging fire burning on the mountain peak. All that was left was a pile of rubble. The World Commerce Association had been destroyed. Who did it? Although Yu Qianzhou was filled with anger, there was no need to ask who did it. Who else could it be other than the Heartless Palace? This was to be expected. Even then, his expression was still slightly unsightly because the foundation he'd established in the immortal dimension with great difficulty had been destroyed just like that. The high spirits he'd once possessed when he occupied this mountain had completely vanished, so his mood naturally wasn't good. There was a gurgling stream by his feet, and there was a slightly deformed silver ball lying in the stream. This was also the reason why he had teleported here instead of appearing in the World Chamber of Commerce's room. Yu Qianzhou casually waved his hand, and the silver orb landed in his hand. He looked at it for a moment, then clenched it tightly in his palm. There were still sounds of intense fighting in the distance. He threw the deformed silver orb back into the stream and disappeared. When he appeared here again, he had already changed his clothes and put on Yo Yud's mask. He flashed and flew towards the direction of the battle. In the direction of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, there were many people floating in the air to watch the show. Yu Qianzhou blended into the crowd and saw that the buildings of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance had already collapsed. A group of people were surrounding some golden-robed men, and the one leading them was someone from Heartless Palace. Feng Yi, the elder from Heartless Palace whom he had met before, was rampaging through the crowd and slaughtering. The sounds of battle were extremely intense. "My friend, what's going on?" Yu Qianzhou cupped his hands and asked the person beside him. The person being questioned had a relatively low cultivation base, an early-stage minor immortal. He turned around to look at Yu Qianzhou. Seeing that he couldn't see through his cultivation, his expression immediately became much more modest. He moved closer and pointed below, sending a voice transmission. "You should have just arrived at the illusory Immortal City and haven't received the news yet. I heard that the Sect Master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing, personally came out and slaughtered everyone during Immortal Emperor Jintai's wedding celebration. Even the Immortal Emperor and Emperor of the Underworld were defeated by him. The two Supremes of Immortal and Underworld have already fled, and the entire Immortal Palace has collapsed." See, Feng Yi, the consecrator of Heartless Palace, immediately gathered some sects to encircle and annihilate the remnants of the Immortal Palace. It's a pity that even we know the news, the people that the Immortal Palace sent to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance haven't received any news and are still fighting desperately here. How sad. Yu Qianzhou nodded and didn't say anything more. He turned around and looked at the mountain that was still emitting thick smoke. That person followed his gaze and raised his chin. That is the once glorious World Chamber of Commerce. Its sect master, Yu Qianzhou, had already formed a feud with Heartless Palace. I heard that this time, he even fawned on Immortal Emperor Jintai's wedding celebration. Great. They were the first ones that Heartless Palace took care of. However, the people of World Chamber of Commerce are really well informed. When the people of Heartless Palace arrived, the place was already empty. Everyone ran away in advance. TSK, TSK. Running away without anyone noticing, it's really admirable. Yu Qianqiu looked at this chattering guy and didn't wait for him to finish. He already flew towards the Heartless Palace's branch in a flash. That person was startled and smacked his lips as if he hadn't had enough. Some of the disciples guarding the door of the Heartless Palace's branch suddenly saw a person land and immediately blocked the incoming person with vigilance. They shouted, "Who is it?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at these people and said indifferently, "I'm here to see if there's anything to buy." Those disciples looked at each other suspiciously. Right now, everyone couldn't wait to watch the show, and suddenly, a person suddenly came to buy something. It was a bit abrupt. One of them pushed his palm up and said, "Sorry, Heartless Palace is not doing any business today." "That's a pity. Absorbing Star's great skill." Yu Qianqiu let out a cold shout and swung his palm to meet the crowd. More than a dozen white mists were sucked into his sleeves, and over 100 purple flame flying swords immediately appeared around him. A pile of dried corpses scattered on the ground. Yu Qianqiu had already charged into the Heartless Palace's branch with the flying swords. Many people instantly dashed out and shouted angrily, "Who is it?" However, a group of densely packed purple flying swords rushed in and started a massacre. Shocked and angry shouts rang out, and there was no lack of miserable cries. Boom! A large area of the Heartless Palace's branch collapsed. Then, purple flames shot up into the sky and immediately shocked the people in the distance. Someone is attacking the Heartless Palace's branch. That purple flame is, for a moment, there was an uproar. Heartless Palace's consecrator, Feng Yi, left the battle and flashed into the sky. He flew towards the branch with a whoosh. As soon as he arrived, he saw that the purple flame suddenly disappeared. The entire Heartless Palace's branch in front of him had turned into ashes. In Utopia, Yu Qianqiu, who had vented the anger in his heart, finally felt better. He floated in the air and closed his eyes to search for the silver ball that he had thrown in the netherworld, preparing to go to the netherworld. Unexpectedly, he discovered dozens of silver balls rapidly moving towards the passageway between the immortal realm and the netherworld. Master is still in the immortal realm? Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and was stunned. Then, he came to a realization. There was a long distance between the paradise immortal realm and the netherworld. Although the old man's cultivation was high, it was impossible for him to arrive in a flash. Although Yu Qianqiu had returned to settle many things, he did not spend too much time in Utopia. He then closed his eyes and sensed again. He discovered that the old man was almost at the passageway between the immortal realm and the netherworld. He happened to be near the entrance of the immortal realm and the netherworld. He had left a silver ball to locate him, so he immediately disappeared in the air to intercept him. However, Changchun's flying speed was too fast. The moment Yu Qianqiu appeared in the valley outside the entrance, he saw a stream of light rushing into the entrance. He immediately shouted, "Master," but there was no response. He immediately flew towards the entrance, but he realized that none of the guards at the entrance had disappeared. They had either been killed or had escaped. However, this was not something he needed to worry about. When he arrived in front of the spinning black light in the cave, he realized that Changchun was long gone. He shook his head and smiled bitterly before flashing into the black light. Once he stepped into the netherworld, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. There were broken limbs and corpses everywhere. There were huge pits everywhere, and the ancient inscription tablet was nowhere to be seen. It was obvious that a huge battle had happened here. I wonder where the Netherworld Royal Palace is. Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and muttered for a while. He then wandered around, but found that there was no living person around. It was difficult to find someone to ask for directions. Just as he flashed back to the entrance of the passageway, there was a soft sound in the cave. Yu Qianqiu suddenly looked back and saw a group of people jumping out of the spinning black light. He was shocked when he saw them. They were none other than the 7 people who escaped from the Immortal Palace led by Nie Shaoqian. The Great Mingluan was also among them. Why did they only? Yu Qianqiu secretly scolded himself for being stupid. Although these 7 people had escaped in front of the old man, they were not necessarily faster than the old man in terms of speed, so it was not surprising that they were overtaken by the old man. When Ye Xiaoqian and the others came out, they were also shocked by the scene in front of them. There were corpses everywhere, but there was only one living person standing in front of them. Moreover, they could not see through his cultivation, which made them vigilant. They thought that Yu Qianqiu had killed so many people alone. Ye Xiaoqian asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at her and ignored her. Instead, he cupped his fist to the great Ming Luan and said, "May I ask if you are the great Ming Luan?" When they heard this, they all looked at the great Ming Luan. The great Ming Luan was confused and cupped his fist to return the greeting. "Yes, I am. What can I do for you?" "I'm looking for you." Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "I am Wei Chunqiu's good friend, Niu Yud. Wei Chunqiu heard about the shocking change in the Immortal Palace, and you came here. He was afraid that you would be lost, so he sent me a message to come find you. I didn't expect to meet you here." They looked at each other. The great Ming Luan's eyes flickered and said, "Niu Yud, why have I never heard Wei Chunqiu mention you?" He was not a fool. He would believe whatever others said, not to mention that they were in a critical period. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He could only secretly transmit his voice. "It's me, Yu Qianqiu. I've disguised myself. Yin Peng and Wei Chunqiu asked me to find you." On the surface, he smiled and pointed at the spinning black light. "Can we talk in private?" The great Ming Luan was stunned. He stared suspiciously at Yu Qianqiu's face and carefully examined it. This voice was really Yu Qianqiu's voice. However, with Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, how could he have arrived here before him? Seeing that the great Ming Luan did not believe him, Yu Qianqiu secretly transmitted his voice again. "Wei Chunqiu, Yin Peng, by Suzhen, Mahjong, and the Chamber of Commerce Alliance executive token that you gave me when I came to the Netherworld. Damn it, you still don't believe me? You're a stray dog now. What's the point of lying to you?" Saying that Wei Chunqiu and Yin Peng was not convincing to the great Ming Luan, but the latter 3 were different. Not everyone knew about them. The great Ming Luan immediately cupped his hands at Ye Xiaoqian and said, "Please wait for a moment, head chief." Then, he gestured at Yu Qianqiu to invite him in, and with some wariness, he stepped into the swirling black light with Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 1100. Who exactly are you? As soon as he returned to the celestial realm, De Ming Luan flashed to the side and asked. He still did not believe that the person in front of him was Yu Qianqiu, but he felt that this person was related to Yu Qianqiu and the others. Yu Qianqiu wanted to use his divine sense to take De Ming Luan away, but De Ming Luan guarded against him as if he was a thief. De Ming Luan's divine sense forced him away and quickly dodged. Yu Qianqiu looked around speechlessly. After confirming that there was no one around, he quickly removed the disguise on his face. "You?" De Ming Luan looked at him in disbelief. He did not expect that it was really Yu Qianqiu. "What about you? Hurry up and come with me." Yu Qianqiu's divine sense enveloped him, and he directly teleported to the underground palace in Utopia. Then, he teleported to the underground base in the divine ruin realm. De Ming Luan was dumbfounded as he looked at the changing scenery around him. He shook his head as if he was dreaming. He was so shocked that he could not speak for a long time. Coincidentally, Yu Nantian, who was leisurely observing the structure of the base, flashed past. Yu Qianqiu quickly waved his hand and said, "Where did Wei Chunqiu and Yin Peng go?" Yu Nantian was stunned. He looked at De Ming Luan in surprise, then pointed to the depths of the underground tunnel and replied, "They seem to be living in the innermost part. I don't know which room they are in exactly. Let's go." Yu Qianqiu called out. De Ming Luan followed him doubtfully. The 2 of them turned left and right in the base and almost lost their way. They had no choice but to call Zhang Peng. Under Zhang Peng's lead, the 2 of them finally arrived at an underground cave. The so-called cave was an underground karst cave. An underground river flowed in the middle. There were many naturally formed caves on the other side of the river, causing the cave to to have a universe inside. It was indeed a good place for meditation. Old monster, I've already brought him back for you. Yu Qianqiu stood on the other side of the river and roared. His voice reverberated throughout the cave. Two people immediately appeared from the two caves on the opposite side. They were Yin Peng and Wei Chunqiu. The two of them looked at the great bright well up and down. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was fine. They looked at Yu Qianqiu meaningfully, but did not say a word of thanks. When Deming Luan saw the two of them, he was a little stunned. You're both here? What is this place? Wei Chunqiu pouted at Yu Qianqiu and said, This kid said he's in the Divine Ruin Realm. Divine Ruin Realm? Deming Luan looked at the few people with a head full of fog and said, What the hell is going on? How can you guys enter the Divine Ruin Realm? Also, why did you bring me here? Nie Xiaoqian and the others are still waiting for me. He looked left and right, thinking that he didn't know how to leave, so he said angrily, Hurry up and send me back. It's the way I brought you in. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Don't think too much about the rest. It's too dangerous for you to go back now. I can't let you go back and risk your life with them. You don't know this, but not long after you left, Wu Xiong exposed his hidden identity. It turns out that he's in cahoots with Wang Qing. They have a group of people in the underworld who are attacking the Dark Imperial Palace. Since they dare to rebel in the underworld, they must have something to rely on. If you follow Nie Xiaoqian and the others now, aren't you courting death? Attacking the Dark Imperial Palace? Wu Xiong and Wang Qing are in cahoots? Deming Luan was shocked. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but I heard Wu Xiong call Wang Qing Big Brother. Yu Qianqiu immediately gave a rough account of what happened at that time. After listening, Wei Chunqiu nodded in agreement and said, Deming Luan, this kid is right. You can't follow Nie Xiaoqian and the others anymore. Let's lie low in the Divine Ruin Realm for now. If it's appropriate, it won't be too late for us to go out. Wu Xiong called Wang Qing Big Brother, who are their father and aunt. How dare they attack the Dark Imperial Palace? Deming Luan muttered to himself. After pondering for a long time, he suddenly raised his head and stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, Yu Qianqiu, tell me honestly, are you sure we can stay safe and sound in the Divine Ruin Realm? As far as I know, the Divine Ruin Realm is also a place with an owner. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He shook his head and said, I really can't guarantee that. I'm not familiar with the situation in the Divine Ruin Realm, but there shouldn't be any danger in the short term where we are temporarily staying. Since that's the case, I still have to go out and meet up with Nie Xiaoqian and the others. Deming Luan frowned and said, People who don't think far ahead will have immediate worries. You can't treat everything with hope, but you have to fight for it. Currently, Jin Tai and Bai Qi haven't completely failed. No one knows what the final outcome will be. If Jin Tai makes a comeback, then my position in the Immortal Palace will become more and more stable. At that time, anyone in the immortal world who wants to touch you will have to think twice. If Jin Tai and Bai Qi completely fail, it won't be too late for me to return. In short, now is not the time to give up so easily. Even if you're not in the Immortal Palace, we can still live well. We don't need you to take care of us. Wei Chunqiu said snappily. Deming Luan smiled faintly and said, I didn't say how to take care of you. Just treat it as leaving a way out for you to play a role at a critical moment. Saying that, he turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, Yu Qianqiu, quickly send me out. If I take too long, it will arouse their suspicions. Wei Chunqiu still wanted to say something, but Yin Peng pulled him back and shook his head slightly, indicating that there was no point in arguing. Yu Qianqiu looked at both sides and saw that it was useless to continue persuading them. He immediately sighed and said, Then I'll go with you. With me by your side, if there's any danger, I can bring you back at any time. Saying that, he returned to Niu Yud's appearance. Doing this was tantamount to taking the same risk as the Deming Luan, but relatively speaking, if he could bring the Deming Luan back at any time, then the Deming Luan's safety would be greatly increased. Hearing this, Yun Peng and Wei Chunqiu looked at Yu Qianqiu in unison. Their hearts were filled with gratitude, but they didn't show it. The Deming Luan still wanted to refuse, but Yu Qianqiu had already pulled him away and disappeared into the cave. When the two of them returned to the netherworld through the passageway between the two worlds, they found that there was no one outside. They didn't know where Nie Shaoqian and the others had gone. While they were looking at each other, Nie Shaoqian and the others flashed out from hiding on both sides, showing how careful these people were. Deming Luan, why were you gone for so long? Nie Shaoqian's eyes flashed as she focused on Yu Qianqiu, who was standing next to the Deming Luan. Next to her, Qingyang looked at Yu Qianqiu with a slightly suspicious gaze. Chief Steward, please don't be so suspicious. This subordinate has received some bad news and is waiting for Chief Steward to make a decision. The Deming Luan quickly told them about Wu Xiong's betrayal and the attack on the Netherworld Royal Palace. After hearing this, everyone revealed a shocked expression. Nie Shaoqian coldly snorted and said, I was wondering why Wu Xiong didn't escape with us. So he was with them. No wonder the immortal emperor felt that something was wrong with him and asked me to secretly send people to investigate him. It's a pity that he took the initiative. Otherwise, he would be begging for death. What do we do now? Do we still rush to the Netherworld Royal Palace? The Deming Luan asked. Then what do you think we should do? Nie Shaoqian slightly sighed and said, even if the Netherworld Royal Palace is really attacked, we still have to find a way to meet up with the immortal emperor. If we follow the immortal emperor, we might have another way out. Otherwise, with just a few of us, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive. Everyone was silent. Who would have thought that the sky would change so suddenly? Nie Shaoqian waved her hand and said, let's go to the Netherworld Royal Palace. Along the way, we'll act according to the situation. Under the dark blue sky, the sounds of battle could be heard. Around a main peak of the Minghuang Mountain, which was surrounded by 5 peaks, there were as many people as ants fighting each other. Violent explosions could be heard continuously. Flashes of light flew everywhere, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. Screams of pain could be heard continuously. Amidst the rolling dark clouds in the sky, huge green snakes that were as thick as dragons opened their bloody mouths and launched sneak attacks on people who flew by at lightning speed, biting them to death and swallowing them into their stomachs. On the ground, there were all kinds of ferocious monsters colliding with each other. Some had huge bodies, some had sharp fangs, and some had thick scales. They fought and tore at each other, not stopping until one of them was dead. Around the Minghuang Mountain, there were chaotic battles and rivers of blood. The pungent smell of blood stimulated the ferocious monsters, causing them to roar loudly and become more and more restless. Countless black-armored soldiers and all kinds of ferocious-looking monsters attacked the Minghuang Mountain from all directions. The Minghuang Mountain was also filled with people who were defending against the enemies. Soldiers in silver, purple, blue, and yellow armors were mixed together in battle formations. It looked messy, but in fact it was orderly. The main peak of Minghuang Mountain was protected by a dazzling white light shield. 4 men in silver, purple, blue, and yellow armors stood on top of the shield, back to back, watching the battle around them. These 4 people were the 4 underworld generals under the command of the Emperor of the Underworld, Bai Qi. They were the silver-armored 1,000 soldiers, the purple-armored proud soldiers, the blue-armored heavenly soldiers, and the yellow-armored victorious soldiers. Seeing the rebel army launching an even more ferocious attack, the blue-armored heavenly soldier waved his hand and shouted angrily, "Fire the soul-slaying bows!" The blue-armored soldiers, who were mixed with the other 3 armies, pulled their bowstrings together. In an instant, hundreds of thousands of arrowheads shining with blue light shot out in all directions, and the sound of bowstrings being pulled rang out. Swish, swish! Countless blue lines shot out in all directions, illuminating this part of the world. For a moment, the sky was filled with horrifying screams. There was nowhere to hide from the rain of arrows. Even if they managed to dodge 1 arrow, they wouldn't be able to dodge the countless arrows. They didn't know what these arrows were made of, but they could easily break through the protective energies. Regardless of whether the depth of the arrows was fatal or not, As long as they were hit by the arrows, their bodies would immediately emit black smoke, and their eyes would roll back as they fell to the ground. Wave after wave of arrows were shot out, and the people in the sky kept falling. The people on the ground fell like wheat being reaped. The attackers couldn't get close at all. If there was a fish that slipped through the net or an expert that barged in and launched a fierce attack, the yellow-armored soldier would immediately put together the shield in his hand and burst out a towering yellow pillar of light to counteract the fierce attack. The purple-armored soldier would immediately brandish his huge sickle to kill. Often, several sickles would hook onto a person at the same time, tearing them apart or cutting them into pieces. Chapter 1101. Countless soldiers in white armor, each holding a halberd, swept across the Minghuang Mountain like a whirlwind. Wherever there were strong enemies, they would come to help. They waved their halberds and swore to defend the Minghuang Mountain with their lives. The whole Minghuang Mountain was a combination of long-range and short-range attacks. It was as solid as an iron bucket. Wave after wave of fierce attacks were repelled. Just as the attackers retreated in fear, they saw countless broken limbs falling down from the Minghuang Mountain. Corpses piled up at the foot of the mountain. Blood flowed everywhere, and the thick smell of blood filled the air. Some bloodthirsty monsters couldn't bear to give up on the delicious food in front of them. They didn't retreat with the troops. Instead, they lay on the piles of corpses and ate them. Immediately, dozens of blue lights shot out from the mountain. The monsters couldn't dodge in time. After being hit by the arrows, they fell down with black smoke rising from their bodies, becoming one of the piles of corpses. In the distance, many forces belonging to the Minghuang Palace knew that someone was attacking the Minghuang Palace. Therefore, they came from all over the underworld to help the king. The rebellious army of Dark Nether had also gathered a large number of troops from all directions. Their numbers and strength were obviously superior to the troops sent to rescue the emperor. Both sides were engaged in a fierce battle in the surroundings of the Minghuang Mountain. Standing on a white light shield, the silver-armored 1,000 soldiers looked down at the Minghuang Mountain. Seeing that another attack had been repelled, he said solemnly, "Something is wrong. It doesn't look like the Blackpool Bitches force is rebelling. There are other forces adding fuel to the fire. Immediately send a message to the army stationed in the endless horizon to bring all the Purgatory army here." The other three were slightly shocked. The purple-armored A.O. June said, "I'm afraid this is not appropriate. The Purgatory army needs to suppress the countless prisoners in the endless horizon. If the army brings all the Purgatory army here, once the prisoners escape, they will become a great threat to the Minghuang Palace. You should know that all the prisoners in the endless horizon hate the Minghuang Palace to the core." The silver-armored 1,000 soldiers took a deep breath of the thick smell of blood in the air and shouted coldly, "Kill! Let the army execute all the prisoners immediately." Execute all the prisoners? The three of them exclaimed in shock at the same time. After so many years, there were already over 100 million prisoners imprisoned in the endless horizon. What did it mean to kill all of them? Huangjia Shangjun sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "There are nearly 100 million prisoners imprisoned in the endless horizon. They are the coolies who forge weapons for the Dark North Palace. If we kill them all, we will cut off the source of our weapons, and in the future, we will be suppressed by the immortal realm. An army of 1,000. You should think twice before you act. You worry too much." The silver-armored 1,000 soldier waved his hand and pointed at the densely packed rebel army that was rushing over from afar. He said sternly, "Kill all the prisoners in the endless horizon. After that, there will be many more people here to replace them. Why worry about the endless horizon running out of coolies? You've heard the news from the immortal realm. Once the immortal palace collapses, the entire force of the immortal palace will immediately collapse. We can't afford to lose the underworld royal palace. It is the symbol of the underworld sovereign's rule over the underworld. Once the underworld royal palace falls, people's hearts will change. No one will take the risk to come to our aid. So, what we need to do is to kill the rebels at all costs and protect the Underworld Royal Palace until the Underworld Sovereign returns. As long as the Underworld Royal Palace stands in the Underworld, as long as the symbol of the Underworld Sovereign's rule over the Underworld remains, those who have ulterior motives will not dare to act recklessly. Do you understand what I mean? The three of them looked solemn and immediately understood the seriousness of the matter. Purple-armored proud soldier said in a low voice, "I will send a message to Jean-June, not just you." The silver-armored thousand soldier pointed at the three of them and himself and said, "If you alone send a message to him to kill over 100 million prisoners in the endless horizon, Jean-June will definitely hesitate. After all, the responsibility is too great. The four of us must all send a message to him, explaining the seriousness of the matter and urging him to make a decision immediately." Okay. The four of them agreed without hesitation. They all took out Jade talismans, wrote down the contents, and crushed them. However, because of this decision, when the red-armored soldier in the endless horizon received the message from the four of them, he immediately pulled on the red iron chains around his body. His entire body was filled with murderous intent. He immediately sent the bloodiest and cruelest order in history to his subordinates. For a moment, the entire endless horizon was filled with miserable screams. Roar. A deafening roar suddenly came from the sky. The silver-armored thousand soldier and the other three quickly looked up. They saw a green shadow flashing in the dense dark clouds. The green giant snakes that were sneakily attacking in the sky all scattered in fear. A snakehead the size of a small mountain, glowing with green light, broke through the dark clouds and reached out. Its body, which was 100 meters long and 5 meters in diameter, was faintly discernible in the dark clouds. Although it looked similar to the other green snakes, it was 4 to 5 times the size of the other green snakes. On the head of the green snake that was the size of a small mountain, glowing with green light, grew 2 ferocious and translucent horns that looked like green crystals. 2 large red eyes flickered. Between the 2 shining red eyes stood the cold and elegant Lady Blackpool. Her black dress fluttered in the bloody night wind. Behind her, between the 2 horns of the giant snake head, stood a man in a black robe. He wore a black bamboo hat that covered half of his face and held a monk's staff with many earrings in his hand. His face couldn't be seen clearly, making him look rather mysterious. A clear and melodious giggle sounded in the bloody night sky. Lady Blackpool covered her mouth and looked at the top of Minghuang Mountain with a smile. "Silver-armored thousand soldier, you have always been bossy and rude to me. I bet you never dreamed that this day would come." A halberd suddenly appeared in the silver-armored thousand soldier's hand. He waved his arm and pointed at Lady Blackpool from afar. He yelled, "Bitch Blackpool, how dare you show yourself? You are still so stubborn even when you are about to die." Lady Blackpool looked at the entire Minghuang Mountain with disdain. She looked at the 4 armored soldiers on the mountain and clicked her tongue. "I didn't expect Bai Qi to have so many people hidden in the dark. All of them are well-equipped. It seems like Bai Qi really invested everything he had. No wonder we couldn't take them down after such a long time." She turned to the man with the monk's staff and bamboo hat behind her and nodded. "Big brother, I didn't expect Bai Qi to be hiding his true strength from me. Minghuang Mountain is heavily guarded by them. Normal warriors can't even get close to them. It seems like I need to take action personally, big brother." The man with the monk's staff slightly nodded. Silver-armored thousand soldier and the others heard Lady Blackpool calling the man big brother and were confused. Since when did Blackpool have a big brother? Silver-armored thousand soldier pointed his halberd at the man in the bamboo hat and yelled, "Who are you? How dare you rebel with this slut? Could it be that you're tired of living?" Without saying a word, the man in the bamboo hat took out a few human heads with tangled hair and threw them to the peak of the Minghuang Mountain. The silver-armored thousand soldier caught the heads with his halberd and took a closer look at them. He was shocked when he saw their faces. He raised his head and glared at the man in the bamboo hat. "You are the king of the Black Mountain?" These people were none other than the people he had sent to investigate the origin of the mysterious king of the Black Mountain in the clear underworld. Now that the other party had suddenly thrown out these heads, their identity was self-evident. Half of the man's face was hidden under the large bamboo hat, and he did not answer. He suddenly raised the staff in his hand and shook it. On the pumpkin-shaped head of the staff that was protected by 9 large rings, dozens of earrings in the 9 large rings rang. Ding-ling-dang-lang. The crisp sound of the earrings resounded through heaven and earth. Immediately, 9 pitch-black whirlwinds swayed out from the head of the staff and flew into the night sky that was filled with the smell of blood. The 9 whirlwinds, which were originally only the size of fist, suddenly expanded, forming 9 black tornadoes that connected the heavens and the earth. In an instant, heaven and earth changed color, and the tornadoes twisted and dragged on the ground, howling as they surrounded the Minghuang Mountain. The people fighting on the ground didn't care whether they were friend or foe. As long as they got close to the 9 black whirlwinds, they would be sucked in by a powerful suction force. As long as they were swallowed, they would scream and die. The 9 black tornadoes were like scavengers. Wherever they went, the densely packed crowd and corpses were immediately cleaned up. Everyone was so frightened that they all retreated far away, leaving clear marks on the ground as they passed. In just a short while, the 9 black tornadoes surrounded the Minghuang Mountain from all directions. The soldiers all over the mountain couldn't help but look at each other in horror at the sight of the terrifying tornadoes. They didn't know how to deal with them. A huge purple scythe appeared in the hands of the proud purple-armored soldier. A wide blue bow appeared in the hands of the blue-armored soldier. A shield covered with inscriptions appeared in the hands of the victorious yellow-armored soldier, and a long-handled broadsword appeared in the hands of the victorious yellow-armored soldier. All of them looked very serious. Before the 9 black whirlwinds could reach the foot of the mountain, the silver-armored soldier waved his halberd and roared, "Attack the target." The other 3 also roared, "Attack." In an instant, countless blue arrows were shot toward the 9 whirlwinds. Yellow light burst into the sky, trying to stop the approaching whirlwinds. White light and purple scythe shadows burst forth, but they seemed to have no effect on the 9 black whirlwinds. The whirlwinds didn't stop at all. Ding-ling-dang-lang. The earrings on the staff rang again, and the countless blue arrows that had been swallowed by the tornado suddenly shot back. Instantly, a large number of soldiers on Minghuang Mountain fell to the ground. The tornadoes stepped onto the Minghuang Mountain almost instantaneously, and with a series of clanging sounds, 9 tornadoes circled around the entire Minghuang Mountain from the foot of the mountain, forming a formation that spiraled upward. The desperate resistance of the soldiers on the mountain had no effect. Wherever the whirlwinds passed, they were easily sucked in and devoured. Immediately, the Minghuang Mountain experienced a catastrophe that hadn't been seen for a long time. Miserable screams rang out one after another. Despite the cruelty of the situation, none of the soldiers in the 4-colored armor tried to escape. In their desperate resistance, they could only watch helplessly as they were swallowed up by the whirlwinds. The silver-armored soldier and the other 3 glared at them. These were their trusted disciples who had followed them for many years. Chapter 1102. Seeing the 9 spiraling tornadoes devouring the lives of the soldiers on the mountain, Lady Blackpool, who stood on the snake's head and watched silently, suddenly giggled and said, "1,000 soldiers, if the 4 of you kneel down and submit to me, I will consider letting you go." Shameless bitch. You're just a bitch who flatters the Emperor of Hell. You're not worthy of us submitting to you. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers waved his halberd and shouted angrily. Lady Blackpool snorted coldly and turned to the man in the bamboo hat behind her. She gritted her teeth and said, "Big brother, we must capture this person alive. I will make him suffer a fate worse than death. Brothers, let's break it together." Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers pointed his halberd at the spiraling tornadoes. The 3 of them responded in unison, "We will obey." Let's go. Silver Armor, 1,000 soldiers rushed out with his halberd in hand. The three of them followed without hesitation. The four of them rushed to one of the tornadoes and attacked at the same time. 4 rays of light that shook the heavens and the earth shot out together. Boom! The air vibrated violently and instantly shattered the tornado. However, the wind was shapeless and the clouds were shapeless. The clanking sound from the earrings of the monk's staff sounded again. The scattered tornado instantly condensed and formed again. The happy expressions on the 4 of their faces froze. Ding-ling-dang-lang. The sound of the monk's staff seemed to contain an inexhaustible amount of magic. The tornado suddenly split into 4 and surrounded the 4 of them. Then, the tornado once again formed into a tornado, wrapping the 4 of them in the eye of the tornado. The eye of the tornado was filled with great pressure. At the same time, countless tangible wind blades were condensed and attacked the 4 of them. Not good. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers used all his strength to strike with his halberd. The force was instantly dissipated by the spinning tornado. He immediately shouted, "Hurry, let's work together and open a way out." The wind whistled past their ears, and it was almost impossible to hear what they were saying to each other. However, the 4 of them could be said to be of one mind, and they simultaneously attacked in the same direction. For powerful rays of light instantly broke open a gap, and the 4 of them immediately teleported out. Almost at the same time that the 4 of them left, the gap closed. The 4 of them quickly returned to the top of the mountain, looking at the tornado that continued to spiral towards the top of the mountain. Then looking at their subordinates that were constantly being devoured, a trace of sorrow flashed across their faces. It wasn't that they didn't want to risk their lives, but they simply couldn't do anything about this strange tornado. They had a feeling of helplessness, as if they had nowhere to use their strength. "We can't let our brothers die in vain," Huang Jiashengjun cried out in sorrow. Silver-armored 1,000 soldiers' bones creaked, knowing that they couldn't hold the Minghuang Mountain for much longer. Just as he was about to order everyone to retreat, a furious roar came from the distance. "How dare you!" This voice was so familiar. The 4 of them shuddered, their faces full of joy. "The Emperor of the Underworld is back," the silver-armored soldier exclaimed. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, only to see a white light and a golden glow cutting through the night sky. "Jin Tai, help me kill these traitors." The angry roar resounded through the sky again. The white light suddenly shot out a black light toward the ground. The black light instantly expanded in the shape of a fan. The light engulfed and strangled the crowd below. Suddenly, there was a series of screams. Countless people were turned into ashes under the rotating strangulation of the black light. "The Emperor of the Underworld is back," someone shouted in fear. The name Emperor of the Underworld was a very powerful deterrent in the underworld. Countless people immediately fled without a care in the world. At the same time, a golden rod instantly grew to several hundred meters long. It spun as it was tossed out. It rushed into the crowd below and began to hit them without restraint. Amidst the rumbling sounds, screams rose and fell. People fled in all directions, unable to resist. The 2 streaks of light, one golden and one white, killed countless people in an instant. The 2 of them passed through the tornadoes and landed on the white barrier. The silver-armored soldier and the other 3 bowed in unison and said, "Greetings, Emperor of the Underworld. Greetings, immortal Emperor." Bai Qi waved his hand and didn't pay attention to the 4 of them. He looked around at the 9 tornadoes with a gloomy expression, listening to the incessant screams and seeing so many core forces of the immortal palace rapidly dying. Jin Tai's expression changed even more. Now that his immortal palace's forces had collapsed, he needed to borrow Bai Qi's forces to rebuild the immortal world. If he allowed Bai Qi's forces to collapse as well, he wouldn't have any forces left to take control of the immortal world. "You dare to show off your insignificant skills here? See how I break it." Jin Tai shouted and spat out golden powder from his mouth. The powder turned into 9 golden clouds and rushed towards the 9 tornadoes. In an instant, they were all swallowed by the tornadoes, and the black tornadoes turned into a dark golden color in the blink of an eye. The dark golden light flashed in the tornadoes, and the 9 tornadoes slowed down in an instant. The golden powder inside was spinning in the opposite direction to counteract the speed of the tornadoes. The power of the tornadoes lay in their rotation. Since they couldn't rotate anymore, they naturally couldn't become tornadoes and wouldn't have any destructive power. In the blink of an eye, the 9 tornadoes were annihilated, leaving only 9 golden dragons that connected to heaven and earth. Jade opened his mouth and sucked the 9 golden dragons back into his stomach. It was a miraculous feat. Everyone on the mountain looked at Jade with cold eyes. An immortal emperor was indeed an immortal emperor. Even the 4 underworld generals couldn't break it, but he just opened his mouth and broke it. The arrival of the emperor of the underworld and the immortal emperor gave the majority of the people on the mountain a sense of relief. Bai Qi glanced at Jade and didn't expect him to do this. Jade expressionlessly looked at the head of the giant snake in the sky and said, "I didn't expect someone in the underworld to know the wind manipulation technique. There was one in the immortal realm, but it was sealed by me." In front of the people, he still acted like an emperor and didn't feel like a stray dog. He turned to Bai Qi and asked, "Bai Qi, how did you do it?" "Hey Qi, this little bitch has been nurtured by you for a long time, but she still dares to bite you, her master. I told you to give her to me, but you didn't want to do it. Now, you have raised a tiger and brought disaster to yourself." Bai Qi coldly stared at Madame Hei Qi and shouted, "Bitch, come over here and kneel." His shout scared many people. The power of the Emperor of the Underworld had seeped into their bones. Many soldiers of the army of the Underworld were already running away, quietly. Even the Madam of Blackpool, who had been flattered by the Underworld Emperor for a long time, couldn't help but tremble in fear when she heard Bai Qi's stern shout. She almost knelt down and begged for mercy. However, it was just a momentary illusion. She had been preparing for this day for so many years. Madame Hei Qi took a deep breath and giggled at Bai Qi, "Your Majesty, the Emperor of the Underworld. How come this title is so hard to pronounce?" "Well, you joined hands with Jade in the Immortal Realm, but you were defeated by the Sect Master of the Heartless Palace, Wang Qing. Why do you have to be the Emperor of the Underworld? Bai Qi, do you think you are qualified to control the Underworld Palace and enjoy the honor of the Emperor of the Underworld? Bitch, I will give you one last chance. Otherwise, you will be tortured for the rest of your life." Bai Qi said word by word, "Kneel down and accept your punishment." Madame Hei Qi suddenly laughed seductively. "Bai Qi, if you kneel down and submit to me, I definitely won't kill you. I'll definitely spare your life and let you be my exclusive male pet. No matter if I'm in the netherworld, the human world, or the immortal world, I'll keep you by my side to serve me. What do you think?" Bai Qi was so angry that he laughed. Good. You are so daring. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me?" Bai Qi, Madame Hei Qi suddenly interrupted him. She recovered her cold and noble expression and said indifferently, "Hand over the obsidian hell light mirror. Give up the throne of the Emperor of the Underworld and surrender to me. Otherwise, today will be the day you die. You want to be the Emperor of the Underworld? Do you think you're qualified?" Bai Qi slowly raised the obsidian underworld light mirror in his hand and asked. Jade glanced at it. There was a sword mark left by the unmoved sword drawing style. But on the way here, the two of them found that the sword mark had disappeared. It was very magical. "Bai Qi, it seems that this bitch has found a new backer. Otherwise, she would not dare to be so presumptuous." Jade looked at the man in the bamboo hat standing between the horns of the giant snake in the air. He found that the man had the cultivation of the last stage of the Emperor of the Underworld. He snorted coldly, wearing a bamboo hat, hiding your head and tail. "Are you afraid to meet people?" The silver-armored soldiers on the side quickly cupped their hands and reported to Bai Qi, who was also paying attention to the man, "Emperor of the Underworld, This man is the king of the Black Mountain. Bai Qi and Jin Tai looked at each other. The man in the bamboo hat slowly took off the bamboo hat on his head and revealed his original appearance. He looked at Jin Tai with sharp eyes and said indifferently, "Jin Tai, we finally meet again." Jin Tai was startled when he saw the man's face. After a while, he said in surprise, "You are Wu Feng? You are the king of the Black Mountain?" Wu and He agreed. "The reason why I hid my name was because of you." The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, said indifferently. Wu Feng, the sect master Wu Feng of the #1 sect in the immortal realm, the wind evolution sect that you destroyed? Bai Qi also asked Jin Tai in surprise. Jin Tai didn't reply to Bai Qi. He looked at the king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, and said, "You became a meditation cultivator after you died? I was wondering why the Imperial Wind technique looked so familiar. But it is amazing that you can cultivate to the last stage of the Emperor of the Underworld in these years." The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, said indifferently, "It is nothing amazing. It is only because I cultivated the Imperial Wind technique that I was fortunate enough to devour a wind spirit. So after you killed me, I was able to maintain my cultivation and consciousness. However, I can't compare to you. I can't restore the flesh and blood body of the immortal realm. I can only turn to the underworld and cultivate again. Jin Tai, you are a metal spirit. I believe you know the secret better than anyone. You devoured a wind spirit?" Jin Tai's face was dark. Bai Qi looked at Jin Tai in surprise and said, "You are a metal spirit." The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, continued to speak indifferently. "Before this, I couldn't be sure if you were a metal spirit or not. But I received news that after my son, Wang Qing, destroyed your flesh and blood body, you were able to reform it. Only then did I confirm that you are a metal spirit. It is laughable that you shamelessly boasted about cultivating an indestructible golden body. What a joke." Chapter 1103. Everyone turned to look at Jin Tai. Most of them had a look of confusion in their eyes. They didn't know what the metal spirit and wind spirit were, but those like Bai Qi who knew were all shocked. However, they were even more shocked that Wang Qing was the son of King Heishan. "Wang Qing is your son? How is that possible?" Jin Tai said with a gloomy face. "Nothing is impossible. Jin Tai's despicable and shameless personality forced me to prepare myself. After the wind spread sect experienced the calamity of destruction, I, Wu Feng, left behind 2 bloodlines in the immortal world. Other than Wang Qing, Wu Xiong is also my son." Recalling the past, the king of the Black Mountain Wu Feng could not help but sigh. "It's precisely because of the huge financial resources I plundered from the netherworld that the heartless palace created by Wang Qing could reach where it is today, and that Wu Xiong could become the great commander of the Immortal Palace's external affairs." Wu Xiong? No wonder. It really was a deliberate scheme. Jin Tai sneered. "Jin Tai, today is the day you end the Wu family." Madame Blackpool gritted her teeth and stared at Jin Tai angrily. Jin Tai snorted and stared at her coldly. "Who are you in the Wu family?" Madame Blackpool said word by word, "Wu Yunfeng." Jin Tai said, "I remember you. The Wind Development Sect did have such a person. However, it was too long ago. If I remember correctly, you weren't as beautiful as you are now. Otherwise, I would have taken you in as a concubine in the Immortal Palace. You would have the chance to be pampered by Bai Qi. You also became a meditation cultivator. Did you devour some wind spirit?" "Because I didn't devour the wind spirit, I couldn't condense a nether body and recover my original appearance. If Big Brother didn't use the wind spirit to protect my soul and find a nether body to possess, I wouldn't have the chance to witness your retribution." Madame Blackpool said angrily, "You weren't very pretty in your previous life, and even after you died, you still needed to find a beautiful body double. Women really do love to be beautiful. You should be thanking me. Otherwise, how could you have the chance to become so beautiful?" Kim Tai laughed loudly, then turned to look at Bai Qi with a strange expression and said, "Bai Qi, I find it strange. Although you are the emperor of the underworld, the king of the Black Mountain is your brother-in-law. Your brother-in-law colluded with your woman to rebel against you. What is going on? Bai Qi glanced at him and coldly said, "You shut up. This slut is just a toy for me to vent my anger on. How can a piece of trash like her, who has been ridden by thousands and slept with tens of thousands, be worthy of being my woman?" "That's true." Jean Tai nodded his head seriously. Madame Blackpool was so angry that her body trembled. "Big brother, help me catch him alive. Help me catch him alive." Whoosh. The king of the Black Mountain staff paused for a moment. Then he looked down and said, "The emperor of the underworld and the immortal emperor have fallen to the point of using words. This means that they have reached the end of the road. Why do you care about it? Bai Qi, hand over the obsidian hell light mirror, and I will spare your life." Bai Qi nodded silently. "Both of you are eager to get the obsidian hell light mirror, so it seems that you already know the secret of the mirror. I can give it to you, but both of you want it, so who should I give it to?" Kim Tai's eyes flickered as he looked at the mirror in his hand, trying to figure out the secret hidden within. "Bai Qi, you don't need to sow discord between us," Madame Blackpool said disdainfully. "I have no intention of fighting for power. I just want to be free and unfettered. Think about it. The emperor of the underworld will be my brother, and the immortal emperor of the immortal world will be my nephew. Where in the three realms won't I be free? The obsidian hell light mirror will naturally be given to my big brother." As soon as this was said, Kim Tai laughed wildly. After a while, he said sternly, "I am still here. Who in the immortal world dares to call himself an emperor? The immortal world has my son, Wang Qing, guarding it. Is there still a place for a stray dog like you?" The king of the Black Mountain, Wu Feng, said indifferently, "Today is the day you die." "Huh, Wu Feng, I could kill you back then, so I could still take care of you now." Kim Tai pointed at the two siblings with a ferocious expression. "I was just worrying about how to deal with that madman, Wang Qing. I didn't expect you two to deliver yourselves to me. I can capture you and use you as a hostage to force Wang Qing to submit." As he spoke, an illusory golden hand rushed out from the top of Kim Tai's head. With a whoosh, it grabbed the two siblings standing on the snake's head with lightning speed, instantly dispersing the dark clouds in the sky. Madame Blackpool was shocked. She teleported behind her brother. The king of the Black Mountain waved his staff casually. With a whoosh, a huge shadow appeared and struck forward like a pillar supporting the heavens. With a loud bang, a huge shockwave dispersed the dark clouds in the sky. The countless green snakes hidden in the dark clouds were revealed on the spot and scattered in all directions in fear. The golden hand shadow was instantly destroyed by the staff shadow. Kim Tai's body swayed slightly as he looked at the staff in the Black Mountain King's hand with a shocked expression. Bai Qi was also slightly shocked. He shone the obsidian hell light mirror in his hand towards the sky. Thousands of black lights burst out, wanting to strangle the two siblings in the sky in one fell swoop. The illusory, huge staff shadow disappeared. Ding-ling-dang-lang sounded hurriedly like the sound of a Sanskrit mantra resounding through the world. The staff in the Black Mountain King's hand stirred in the direction of the Mingwang Mountain. A dark whirlwind erupted from the tip of the staff and expanded. The black light shot by the obsidian hell light mirror was instantly absorbed by the dark whirlwind. At the same time, a powerful suction force was dragging the obsidian hell light mirror in Bai Qi's hand. The more he tried to use the black light to resist, the stronger the suction force became. It was as if the suction force was trying to take away his treasure. Bai Qi was shocked. He forcefully stopped the black light shot out from the mirror and quickly put away the obsidian hell light mirror. Kim Tai could naturally see that something was wrong. He stared at the sky and said in a deep voice, "What a powerful treasure. It shouldn't be something unknown, but I've never heard of it. Bai Qi, have you heard of it? When did such a treasure appear in the three realms? I can see that he hasn't mastered it yet. It seems like he can't fully unleash the treasure's power." Bai Qi looked at the sky and shook his head in doubt, indicating that he didn't know either. The Black Mountain King in the sky was relieved after defeating their attacks. He laughed and said, "This treasure is an ancient god's treasure left in the Netherworld Palace by the coiling dragon god, after he killed an ancient god called the Wind God. It's called the Wind God Staff. Those who don't have the wind attribute can't use it. I happen to get it. This is heaven's will. Kim Tai, I bet you didn't even dream that I would get the ancient god's treasure. Ha! Today is the day you die." The monk's staff in his hand clanked, and dozens of earrings bounced. The dark whirlwind abruptly expanded into a sky-covering net, directly wrapping the entire Minghuang mountain in it. The sky-coiling whirlwind twisted and spun rapidly, changing the color of the sky and filling the entire space with whistling noises. Madame Blackpool, who was standing on the snake's head, took a few steps forward. She held one of the snake's horns and looked down at the Minghuang mountain that was covered by the whirlwind. She gritted her teeth and said, "Brother, leave Bai Qi alive for me to vent my anger." The Black Mountain King, Wu Feng, glanced at her and frowned slightly. However, he didn't say anything. He retracted the staff in his hand and put the end of the staff on the snake's head. The dozens of earrings on the 9 arcs of the staff kept spinning on their own. It was very strange. The people who were trapped on the Minghuang mountain turned pale with fright. It was as if they were trapped in endless darkness. The strong wind wrapped around them like sharp blades. The strong, tearing force instantly pulled many people into it. Countless screams sounded. Those who were pulled into it were cut into pieces in the blink of an eye. Not even their bones could be seen. The soil and stones on the mountain were blown up like meteors, and there were rumbling sounds everywhere, forcing everyone to release their protective aura to resist. However, this increased the wind resistance, making it even more difficult to resist the strong wind. Those whose cultivation was not strong enough were swept away by the strong wind, leaving only screams in the whistling and ear-piercing hurricane. In just a few moments, almost all the people on the mountain were killed. Seeing this, Bai Qi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. These were his trusted subordinates, whom he had spent countless years training. Suddenly, he lost his elegant demeanor. He used all his strength to attack the approaching wind. Jin Tai and the others also attacked with all their strength. However, the treasures left behind by the ancient god were not to be underestimated. The endless power made their attacks disappear like clay oxen in the sea. They couldn't see any effect. Instead, they tended to increase the power of the wind. Jin Tai, didn't you say that the wind-riding art was a small trick? Where's the way to break it? Bai Qi turned around and shouted angrily. Jin Tai looked at the approaching wind and replied angrily, "This is not a normal wind-riding art. It is the power of the wind, god magic treasure. How can I break it?" Huang Jia, who had lost all his subordinates, shouted angrily, "Your subordinate will open the way for the emperor of the underworld." The shield in his hand emitted a dazzling light, and he rushed toward the approaching wind with the shield. "Shengjun, come back. You can't stop it." Bai Qi reached out his hand and roared. His face was distorted. "Shengjun! Shengjun! Shengjun!" Silver-armored 1,000 soldiers and the others cried out involuntarily. They could only watch as Huang Jia, who was protected by a faint yellow light, desperately tried to resist the wind. However, the power of the wind was too strong. It was so strong that even Bai Qi and Jin Tai didn't dare to act rashly. How could he resist it? He resisted for a while in the strong wind. The yellow light on the shield became weaker and weaker. In the blink of an eye, it was completely blown away, and the shield was forcibly blown away. Without the protection of the treasure, Shengjun was blown away like a thin piece of paper. He didn't even have time to scream before he was torn to pieces in front of everyone. He couldn't even keep his life, let alone open the way for the emperor of the underworld. Before the crowd had time to grieve, Jin Tai suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "There is change." The golden cloud rod in his hand suddenly grew bigger and bigger like a pillar supporting the sky. He stabbed directly into the sky. In the blink of an eye, the pillar that was several meters in diameter pierced through the wind and pierced the sky. A rapid sound of metal colliding came from the golden pillar. Chapter 1104. Everyone looked up and saw that the golden pillar had already started to be scratched by the fierce wind, and the entire pillar was also shaking violently. Jintai pressed his palm on the golden pillar, and a big hole appeared on the pillar. "Let's go. My golden cloud rod can't hold on for long." As soon as Kinte finished speaking, he had already turned into a golden light and flashed into the hole in the pillar. Bai Qi and the others followed closely behind. After entering, they found that the pillar was completely empty, forming an empty tube from the bottom to the top. They quickly followed the violently shaking tube and flashed out. As soon as they dashed out from the top of the pillar, they saw Jintai grab the golden pillar. The golden pillar shrunk quickly and returned to his hand from the center of the hurricane. They had escaped from the hurricane. Seeing what Jintai did, Bai Qi was shocked. He grabbed Jintai's clothes and shouted angrily, "What are you doing? More than 1,000 of my men haven't come out yet. Are you crazy?" Jintai pushed him away with his elbow. He picked up the battered golden cloud rod and said harshly, "The golden cloud rod can't hold on for long. It is already difficult for us to come out. We don't have time to wait for more than 1,000 of your men to escape. Then why didn't you use it to escape earlier? Sheng Jun didn't have to die for nothing." Bai Qi, who was about to lose his mind, was pulled back by the silver-armored army and the others. They all advised him that as long as they could protect the Emperor of the Underworld, they would have a chance to avenge Sheng Jun. If it weren't for Sheng Jun's death, I wouldn't have thought of using this method to escape. His death was worth it. Otherwise, we would all die together. Jintai looked at the angry Bai Qi and snorted coldly. "Now is not the time for you to show mercy. We don't have a way to break the power of the divine wind staff yet. If we don't leave now, we won't be able to. If you don't leave, I will." On top of the giant snake's head that was floating in the air, Lady Blackpool was looking at the tornado that connected the sky and the earth. She praised her brother in amazement. The king of the Black Mountain, on the other hand, was looking at the tornado with a serious gaze. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky above the tornado. He said in a deep voice, "Not good. They actually managed to escape." Madame Blackpool was shocked. "What?" With a swoosh, the monk's staff in the hand of the king of the Black Mountain turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a huge fellow that was several thousand feet tall, striking toward the top of the tornado with a force that could split the heavens and the earth. With such power, the people high up in the sky naturally noticed it as well. Kintai was the first to exclaim, "Not good. Let's go." Bai Qi and the others also teleported in a panic. A few streams of light quickly disappeared into the horizon. The staff missed its target, and the huge shadow of the staff floated in the air. Lady Blackpool said in surprise, "Big brother." The king of the Black Mountain looked at the sky and sighed. "They still managed to escape. Then why aren't you chasing after them?" Madame Blackpool said anxiously. The king of the Black Mountain shook his head and smiled bitterly. "It's useless. The reason I can defeat them is because of the power of the divine wind staff. In terms of cultivation, I'm far inferior to Bai Qi and Kintai, and in terms of speed, I'm also inferior to them. Sigh. Wang Qing is still a little too impatient. I've already said that there's no need to rush. I'll wait until I understand more of the divine wind staff's abilities before I make a move. At that time, victory will be within my grasp. How can I let them escape and leave behind future troubles? You can't blame Wang Qing for this. It is said that he has already noticed that Kintai is going to attack the Heartless Palace. He can't just sit there and wait for his death, so he naturally has to fight back." Even though she said that, Madame Blackpool's expression was somewhat regretful. After all, she had prepared for so many years, but in the end, she still had regrets. She was somewhat unwilling to accept this. He noticed that Kintai is going to attack him. Then why didn't we receive any news about it? This brat is looking down on me more and more. He didn't even discuss with me beforehand. The king of the Black Mountain's tone was somewhat heavy. I suspect that Wu Xiong's reckless actions aroused Jin Tai's suspicions. As for the specifics, it won't be too late to ask Wang Qing when we meet. As for why he didn't discuss it with you, I'm afraid. Madame Blackpool hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, I'm afraid it has something to do with the fact that you forced him to sever his relationship and remember his hatred. Is it wrong for me to ask him to take revenge for his mother? What else in the world is more important than avenging his parents? If I didn't force him to cultivate wholeheartedly, he wouldn't be able to defeat Kintai and Bai Qi and achieve such a glorious achievement today. The King of the Black Mountain's tone was stern. If you can't forget your wife, why can't he do the same to his wife? Madame Blackpool's words were in her mouth. Only she knew what she was saying, so she didn't dare to let her brother hear it. The siblings were being suspicious. Perhaps when they met up with Wang Qing, they would realize that the reason why things turned out like this was that Yu Qianqiu, who was not well known but was like a sh*t stirrer, played a big role in it. They didn't know if such a small character like him had harmed Kintai and Bai Qi or helped them. In short, he had caused the things that were about to happen to deviate from the original track. After the King of the Black Mountain calmed down, he grabbed at the sky, and the whirlwind immediately stopped. The whirlwind turned into a ball of black wind and went back into the giant staff that was floating in the air. The towering Minghuang Mountain seemed to have lost half of its original size and looked straight and steep. The white light shield that was protecting the Minghuang Palace on the main peak was a little dim. The giant staff that was floating in the air plunged down like an avalanche. Boom! The ground shook and the white light shield collapsed instantly. The Minghuang Palace suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The giant staff then turned back into the original tin staff and flashed back to the King of the Black Mountain's hand. Madame Blackpool's eyes lit up when she saw the Minghuang Palace on the main peak. She waved her sleeves and pointed at the Minghuang Palace. The giant snake under her feet let out a deafening roar and carried the two of them to the Minghuang Palace quickly. Before they reached the top of the mountain, Madame Blackpool couldn't wait to get down. The King of the Black Mountain waved his hand, and a bald man in black clothes flashed over. His bald head was shiny, and his big eyes had no eyebrows. A ferocious glint could be seen in his eyes. He cupped his hands and said in a hoarse voice, "My king, send my order to search for the whereabouts of Bai Qi, Jin Tai, and the others. Report to me as soon as you have any definite information." The King of the Black Mountain yelled. The bald man in black clothes replied respectfully, "Yes," and left quickly. The Emperor of the Underworld was defeated, and the morale of the people was disrupted. The troops who came to rescue the Emperor from all directions either surrendered or ran away. Another fierce battle ensued. However, the outcome had been determined. Unless the Emperor of the Underworld came back again, he wouldn't be able to cause any more trouble. In the Deepwood Forest, Madame Blackpool's hysterical laughter suddenly came from the small attic where the Emperor of the Underworld lived. She laughed so happily. When the King of the Black Mountain heard the laughter and dashed in, Madame Blackpool was already lying on the rocking chair by the window. Her eyes were slightly closed, and she rocked the chair leisurely with a smile on her face. She murmured, "Bai Qi, help me massage my feet." The King of the Black Mountain was startled by her words. He looked around quickly, but he didn't find Bai Qi. After a while, he realized that his younger sister was daydreaming. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is this the building where Bai Qi lives? He glanced at the arrangement of the desk and the bookshelf full of scrolls. Unexpectedly, Madame Blackpool didn't answer his question with her eyes closed. "Big brother." The Deepwood Forest and this attic belong to me. You can handle the rest as you see fit. She rocked on the chair with a comfortable expression on her face. The King of the Black Mountain was speechless as he put away his staff. He walked to the desk and saw a scroll on it. He pushed it away and rolled it on the table. The scroll showed a scene of a green-robed elder fighting against 4 netherworld generals and Bai Qi alone. The painting was so exquisite and realistic that even the King of the Black Mountain couldn't help but reveal an expression of admiration. He said, It seems that this Bai Chi, who always dresses like a scholar, is not just pretending to be an elegant person. The standard of the painting is quite high. If I can catch him and make him my male toy, it would be good to keep him for my painting. Madame Blackpool murmured with her eyes closed. She seemed to be crazy. The king of the Black Mountain frowned and glanced at her. His eyes stopped on the old man in green robe in the painting. He said in a deep voice, "This person must be Bai Changchun who fought with Wang Qing in the Immortal Palace. This person is a loner. I don't know what his intentions are. I don't know whether he is a friend or a foe." Madame Blackpool twisted her body comfortably. She tilted her head and opened her eyes. She smiled at him and said, "So what if he is Bai Changchun? Big brother, you have a divine wind staff. Do you still need to be afraid of him? Even so, this person must not be underestimated." The king of the Black Mountain said with a serious expression, "The king of the Black Mountain can't enter the underworld forbidden land. Even I can't do anything with the power of the divine wind staff. However, this person can enter and exit the forbidden land. Who dares to underestimate him?" Suddenly, he seemed to think of something. He looked around and said, "Rumor has it that the mysterious underworld saintess also lives in the Deepwood Forest. Why didn't I notice anyone else here?" Madame Blackpool suddenly stood up. She gritted her teeth and said, "That bitch is always playing tricks. She doesn't take me seriously every time I see her. Only Bai Chi would fall for her tricks. He even named her the Underworld Saintess. She lives in the back. It's a good time to get even with her." After saying that, he directly flashed out of the window, flew across the forest, and landed in the small courtyard with low walls made of jade. Looking around and seeing that there was no one around, he immediately rushed into the house, not letting go of a single corner to search. The king of the Black Mountain followed closely behind her. He looked around and finally, his eyes fell on the smooth black sand on the ground. He picked up a handful of sand and rubbed it in his hand. He frowned and said to himself, "Crushed spiritual stones?" His eyes instinctively stared at the grindstone under the eaves. Madame Blackpool searched the house and quickly went to the Deepwood Forest outside to search everywhere. Later, she sent people to search the entire Dark Imperial Palace. However, she still couldn't find the Underworld Saintess. When she returned to the small courtyard with a gloomy face, she saw the king of the Black Mountain standing next to the grindstone under the eaves. He held a jade archive in his hand and said nothing. Chapter 1105. When we were about to make our move, I sent people to keep an eye on Minghuang Mountain. I didn't want this bitch to escape. Madame Blackpool walked under the eaves and said angrily, "I searched everywhere, but I couldn't find her. Where is she hiding? There's no need to look for her. She left a long time ago." The king of the Black Mountain, who had been silent, suddenly sighed. He handed over the jade archive in his hand and said, "She left this on the grindstone before she left. She left it for you. Take a look. Left a long time ago. Could it be that she can really predict the future?" Madame Blackpool took the jade archive with a puzzled look. It read, "Since I want to steal the host's place, I will leave early. Wu Yinfang, don't worry about me." It was just a few words, but Madame Blackpool's face darkened. She smashed the jade archive into pieces and looked around. "You must be hiding in Minghuang Palace. I will find you." "How do you know she is hiding in Minghuang Palace?" The Black Mountain King frowned. "Do I need to ask?" Madame Blackpool said angrily, "Ever since our bodies were destroyed in the immortal realm, you have never called my name in the underworld. How could she know that my real name is Wu Yinfang? It's obvious that she heard the conversation between us and Jean Tai. That's why she knows that I'm called Wu Yinfang. But now, she's deliberately mystifying us. She wants to confuse us so that she can escape. I won't let her succeed so easily." "Calm down. Bai Chi is not an ordinary person. If Bai Chi can call her the Underworld Saintess, she must have something special about her." The king of the Black Mountain carefully looked around the simple furnishings in the courtyard, as well as the black sand that was ground by spirit stones, and slowly said, I've long heard that this underworld saintess is proficient in the art of divination. Maybe she really is a prophet. You believe this nonsense? If she really can predict the future, she wouldn't have been defeated today, and he wouldn't have let me live until now. Madame Blackpool said through gritted teeth. That bitch can only fool that bookworm Bai Qi with her tricks. She can't fool me. Even if I have to turn the entire Minghuang mountain upside down, I'm going to find that bitch. As soon as she finished speaking, Madame Blackpool left in a hurry again. The king of Black Mountain frowned and shook his head. He entered the underworld saintess's house and carefully observed the decorations inside. Several streams of light flew quietly in the sky above the netherworld. They were Jin Tai, Bai Qi, and the others. Everyone's expressions were ugly. The most uncomfortable ones were Jin Tai and Bai Qi. The two of them had ruled the immortal and netherworld for so many years. First, there was Bai Changchun, then there was Wang Qing, and now there was the king of Black Mountain. When did the immortal emperor and netherworld emperor become so easy to bully? In the end, we have been living a comfortable life for too long. Otherwise, we wouldn't have suffered such a defeat. If we were prepared, these people wouldn't be able to do anything. We were too careless. Kintai suddenly let out a long sigh and looked back. After confirming that no one was chasing after them, he gestured to everyone and took the lead to hide in a rocky stream below. The rest of them also followed him down there. Only Jin Tai, Bai Qi, Qian Jun, Ao Jun, and Tian Jun were left in the stream of rocks. None of Bai Qi's subordinates escaped. They were all killed by the divine wind staff. Bai Qi was still angry at Jin Tai. He didn't respond to Jin Tai's words along the way. Jin Tai knew that Bai Qi blamed him for not rescuing his trusted subordinate, Huang Jia Shengjun, in time. Jin Tai released his divine sense to scan the surrounding area. After making sure no one was around, he sneered at Bai Qi. You are too soft-hearted. No wonder you raised that bitch, Blackpool. Raising that bitch can at least please me in bed. It's better than you helping Black Mountain raise Wu Xiong's eldest son. Bai Qi immediately retorted. Silver Armor and Qian Jun, who were immersed in sorrow, couldn't help but look at Jin Tai. Jin Tai Ning was speechless. He glanced at Bai Qi's subordinates. To be honest, he was actually quite envious of Bai Qi. He had long wanted to ask Bai Qi for advice on how he could bring out such a group of loyal subordinates who were willing to die. However, he could not bring himself to do so. Is there any point in saying this now? We are really stray dogs now. Let's think about how to turn things around first. Jin Tai glanced at the storage bracelet on Bai Qi's hand and lightly said, What is the secret of your obsidian light mirror? Why are Wu Feng and his sisters so eager to get it? If there is a secret that can help us turn things around, why don't you say it now? What is there to hide now? Although Bai Qi was angry, he also knew that now was not the time to fight. It was better to work together and discuss a good plan. After pondering for a moment, he said, Obsidian Light Mirror's original name is not this. There is a record left by Coiling Dragon in the Netherworld God's Palace. It is called Yin-Yang Mirror. Jin Tai's eyes immediately lit up. How can the treasure mentioned by Coiling Dragon be easy to obtain? Is it because you can't use the power of this treasure? Otherwise, how could you block the divine wind staff? It is true that I can't use the power of this treasure, but the true power of this yin-yang mirror is not reflected in fighting. Bai Qi glanced at Silver Armor Army and the others. They were all his trusted subordinates, so there was nothing to hide. He immediately said with a solemn expression, According to the records of Coiling Dragon, the yin-yang mirror can see through the two realms of yin and yang and control the cycle of life and death. It is said that those who can use the power of this treasure can see anyone's fate and reincarnation. In other words, it can show you who you reincarnated from in your previous life. It can also control what you reincarnate into in your next life, whether it is a human, a dog, a pig, a cow, and so on. When they heard this, they were all shocked. They didn't think that there would be such a treasure. It was a little too magical. Jin Tai was stunned. I'm afraid even a divine weapon can't use such a miraculous effect. It can see through the yin and yang and control the cycle of life and death. This treasure is too heaven-defying. I don't know whether a divine weapon has such a miraculous effect or not, but according to the records of Coiling Dragon, this treasure is even older than a divine weapon. It is a treasure that was born when the two realms of yin and yang were still in chaos. Later, because this mirror absorbed the yin eye and yang eye of yin and yang could not see each other, so they could not mix together. Thus, yin and yang were separated, creating the two realms of yin and yang. It is said that this mirror represents the yin-yang eye. This is too mysterious and too profound. I still don't understand what it means. Bai Qi shook his head and sighed. Older than a divine weapon. Jin Tai's throat moved slightly, and a trace of greed flashed in his eyes. Bai Qi saw this and coldly snorted. Unfortunately, this thing fell in the underworld when the two realms of yin and yang were divided, so is destined to be a treasure of the underworld. Jin Tai, don't let your imagination run wild. Even if this thing is given to you, you have no way to control it. In your hands, it is less than a piece of scrap iron. Nonsense, when did I let my imagination run wild? Jin Tai's expression did not change, and his heart did not jump as he said, I am just curious. Although this treasure is magical, it is actually a bit weak. In terms of power, it is not even comparable to the Wind God Staff in Wu Feng's hands. Why are the Wu siblings so anxious to get it? This is mainly because of the words of Coiling Dragon in the Netherworld God Palace. He said that only those who can wield the yin-yang mirror are worthy of being the ruler of the underworld. Bai Qi revealed a trace of a bitter smile and slightly shook his head. It is because of this insignificant sentence. Coiling Dragon once controlled the entire Styx and was the main god that the Styx's water race worshipped. And those old fellows in the Netherworld God Palace who desired to ascend to the divine realm took the words left behind by Coiling Dragon as a divine decree, making people helpless. Jin Tai, now you should understand why this obsidian light mirror is so important, right? Jin Tai pondered for a while and then nodded thoughtfully. I understand. I used to think it was strange that the water race of the Styx's united forces were so powerful, and they had so many masters, but they never interfered with the rule of the underworld emperors of the past. This was somewhat illogical. It turned out that the underworld emperors of the past had the obsidian light mirror, which is also known as the yin-yang mirror. To put it bluntly, those old fellows from the Netherworld Divine Palace are just flattering the Coiling Dragon god. In short, it's not because this mirror is powerful, but because it represents the teachings of the Coiling Dragon god. Exactly, this is what it means. This obsidian light mirror is the symbol of the ruler of the underworld. No matter who sat on the throne of the underworld emperor of the underworld, if they did not have this obsidian light mirror, they could not be considered a true emperor of the underworld. Once they had a conflict with the water race of the Styx, or provoked the old fellows in the Netherworld God Palace, if they could not take out the obsidian light mirror to control the situation, they would not give face to the emperor of the underworld. It is estimated that no one could sit firmly on the throne of the underworld emperor. This was the reason why the Wu siblings were anxious to get the obsidian light mirror. Without the yin-yang mirror, they did not have the right to truly rule the underworld. At this point, he could not help but look at the vast netherworld. The night wind blew, and he did not know if he could get back what he had lost today. He smiled slightly bitterly. In fact, I think that only the past emperors of the underworld who had wielded the obsidian light mirror could truly understand the true meaning of Coiling Dragon's teachings. Coiling Dragon said that only those who could wield the yin-yang mirror were worthy to be the ruler of the underworld. It did not mean that anyone who had the yin-yang mirror could be the ruler of the underworld. The keyword was wield the yin-yang mirror, meaning that only those who could truly use the power of the yin-yang mirror could be the ruler of the underworld. Everyone had misunderstood Coiling Dragon's meaning. But these words, to those who regarded Coiling Dragon's teachings as the decree of God, if you could not take out solid evidence to convince them, if you dare to speak nonsense, they would probably regard it as tampering with the decree and then beat you to death. Chapter 1106. Hearing this, Silver Armor Army and the other two showed an expression of understanding. They had learned something new. Jade, on the other hand, had lost interest in the obsidian light mirror because it was of no use to him. He didn't have the mood to get entangled in such a topic. To him, nothing was more important than regaining control of the immortal world. His eyes flickered as he said, "Bai Qi, can this obsidian light mirror get the help of the experts of the Styx's water race and the old fellows of the Netherworld Spirit Estate to help us regain what belongs to us? I hope the obsidian light mirror has that ability, but do you think it's possible?" Bai Qi said with a mocking expression. The coiling dragon gods didn't say that they have to listen to the command of the yin-yang mirror's wielder. Do you really think they're fools? They're all a bunch of old fools. They're not as stupid as you. If the obsidian light mirror could really command the entire netherworld, I'm afraid it wouldn't have fallen into my hands. Those old fellows would have come out of the mountains to snatch it, and I wouldn't be with you until today. Let's use our brains and find another way out. Jade thought about it and said with some anger, "Then what do you think we should do? Are we supposed to hide here forever? Staying here isn't a long-term solution. We'll be discovered sooner or later. We have to find a safe place to settle down first, then think of a way to deal with that Wu Feng and his family." Want to find a safe place to settle down? Where's there a safe place for us to settle down now? Bai Qi sneered. How about the Netherworld Spirit Estate? You have the obsidian light mirror. Those old fellows shouldn't stop you from finding a place to settle down there. Jade said naturally. Bai Qi nodded. It will help us settle down, but don't forget, Wu Feng was able to bring out the Wind God Staff from the Netherworld Spirit Estate. That means he can also enter and exit the Netherworld Spirit Estate. Although we don't know the reason, it's very likely that he has a close relationship with one of the almighty beings inside. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to safely bring out a treasure like the Wind God Staff. In this situation, do you still dare to take this risk? Qintai's expression froze, and he said helplessly, "We can't stop Wang Qing's sword-drawing style in the immortal world, and the underworld can't beat his father's Wind God Staff. However, we didn't dare to rashly step into the human world as we were afraid of incurring the wrath of the heavens. The golden lightning that filled the sky still gave me lingering fear. It was too frightening. It's a pity that it's not time for the Divine Ruin Realm to open yet. Otherwise, after we enter, we can join hands to seal the passageway, and when the time is right, we can open the passageway to take revenge. We probably can't win against Wu Feng even if we go to the Netherworld God Manor, and we can't enter the forbidden area of the underworld. Don't tell me there's no place for us to stand within the several realms. How do we end up like this? It's all your fault. If you hadn't eradicated the Wind Evolution Sect back then, would there be such trouble today? However, that ghost world Forbidden Land. Bai Qi said thoughtfully, I wonder what method that Bai Changchun used to enter and exit the mysterious Forbidden Land. Speaking of which, if we can rope in Bai Changchun's help, who knows, maybe that old brat's amazing skills can break the Divine Wind Staff. Bai Changchun? Do you think that's possible? You almost killed him back then, and he kept saying in the Immortal Palace that he would take my life in the future. There's no way to resolve the grievances between us. At this moment, Kim Tae realized that he seemed to have pushed him too far. He couldn't find a way out. His face gradually became ferocious as he said, If you push me too far, then don't blame me for being impolite. Oh, Bai Qi dragged out the last syllable and said with some disdain, How can you be impolite? It's already come to this. Are you still being polite to them? Why can't I see that? Jade said with a savage expression, Open all the demon realm seals in the immortal and netherworld, and the 72 realms of the human world. Open the 74 demon realm passageways that the demon god opened back then. Even if you can't open them all, just opening one is enough. I'm sure that the 3 knights will seize the opportunity to lead the heroes of the demon world to the 3 realms again. Demon King, 3 knights. The silver-armored army, purple-armored army, and blue-armored celestial army all cried out in shock. You're crazy. Bai Qi was very moved as he said sternly, Back then, We spent a great deal of effort to seal the three knights and his group of demons in the demon world. Once you open the demon world, the three realms will once again fall into the hands of the demon Tao, who in the three realms can be the three knights' opponent. Back then, even those old fellows in the Netherworld God Palace had to think twice and didn't dare to provoke them. So many years have passed. Have you thought about how terrifying the three knights is now? Let's not talk about this for now. Back then, it was you and I who used a scheme to seal them. When the three knights comes out, the first thing he will do is seek revenge on us. At that time, there really will be no path to heaven or door to hell. Jintai was silent for a while. From his abnormally serious gaze, it could be seen that he was also very afraid of the demon King Three Knights. After thinking for a while, he looked at Bai Qi and asked indifferently, "If we are forced into a corner and the Three Knights is willing to let us go and save us, are you willing to open the demon realm passageway and let the Three Knights out? The Three Knights will let us go and save us." Don't talk nonsense. That's impossible. We sealed them for so many years, and they want nothing more than to swallow us alive. How could they let us go? Bai Qi suddenly raised his hand and said sternly, "Let's stop here. I will not agree to open the demon world again. Let's not talk about this anymore. We should think of another way. Actually, if you really force me to that point, you should know that I can open the seal of the demon world by myself. I don't need your permission." Jintai stared straight at Bai Qi and said slowly, "Back then, after sealing the demon world, you took a piece of cloth stained with the blood of the three knights and said that you have a secret technique to communicate with the three knights of the demon world through the blood on the cloth. Presumably, you weren't lying at that time." Bai Qi sneered, "You want me to communicate with the three knights of the demon world and negotiate with him on the condition that he let us go and help us, and we open the demon realm passageway to release him?" That's right. That's right." Jintai nodded. Bai Qi raised his hand and pointed at his own head. With a face full of ridicule, he said, "Use your brain and think about it. Even you, Lady Jean, go back on your word and have no integrity to speak of. Could it be that you dare place your hopes on San Yi to keep his word? He can easily agree and deal with you after he comes out." Jintai calmly said, "We can make him swear on the demon god curse. From the one night demon monarch to the second night demon monarch to the third night demon monarch, they are all direct descendants of the demon god. They worship their ancestor, the demon god, to the extreme. As long as the three knights swears on the demon god, he will not dare to violate the oath and blaspheme the demon god. We can use this to negotiate the conditions. What is there to be afraid of? Of course, unless the three knights is willing to be trapped in the demon world and not come out. In that case, there is nothing we can do. But I'm sure he wants to come out." Bai Qi shook his head. "You're crazy. With the passage of time, if the three knights doesn't take the oath seriously, I can't imagine how miserable your death will be. I know this method is very risky, but if we are forced into a dead end, we will die either way. Since there is a glimmer of hope, why don't we try it? At least if we die, we can drag them down with us. No one will have an easy time. Just think of it as revenge. There is nothing bad about it." Jintai said with a self-mocking tone, "What do you think? Don't you want to take revenge for the Huang Jia Shang army?" The three silver-armored soldiers looked at each other. Then at the emperor of the underworld they were loyal to. Bai Qi fell into silence. After a while, his eyebrows twitched. It was unknown what he thought of, but he looked at Jintai up and down and said, "Jintai, you are actually a gold spirit. This is really surprising. Could it be that your physical body is made of gold? If that is the case, then you will be invincible? You have played with so many women. If you take Ji Wu as your wife, can she help you reproduce?" Hearing this, Jintai's face instantly changed. With a twisted expression, he said sternly, "Bai Qi, I am talking to you about serious matters." If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of being discovered, he would have shouted it out loud. "Don't misunderstand. I'm talking about serious matters." Bai Qi continued to ask in a curious tone, "As far as I know, there are 5 great spirits in this world. Since you're a gold spirit, then there should be other spirits. Do you not have a way to contact them for help? Bai Qi, you still dare to mention, oh. Jin Tai's angry face froze. Suddenly, he clenched his fists and said, how could I forget about him? If we can find him for help, we might be able to solve the problem. Who? Is he also one of the 5 great spirits? Bai Qi's eyes lit up. The 3 silver-armored soldiers' eyes also lit up when they heard that there was hope to solve the problem. Jin Tai squinted his eyes and said, that old thing always appears and disappears mysteriously, but he is indeed a capable person. At least, he is stronger than me. It is just that he is used to staying aloof from worldly affairs. I don't know if we can find him. Saying this, he suddenly turned around and said, let's go. We will return to the immortal world and go to the ancient forest of Wood Immortal Province. Maybe we can find him there. Okay. Bai Qi nodded. The silver-armored soldiers was startled. He quickly cupped his fists and said in a low voice, Emperor of the Underworld, we have contacted Zhangjun. The Purgatory Army was attacked by a large number of people. Now they're all dead. Zhangjun led a few of his subordinates to escape and found a chance to send a message to us. He asked where to meet us. Should we ask him to go directly to the immortal world? Bai Qi slowly turned around and looked at his 3 subordinates. He tightly pursed his lips for a while. Then he secretly took out a crystal-clear ice talisman and stuffed it into the silver-armored soldier's hands. He transmitted his voice to the 3 silver-armored soldiers at the same time. I don't know what will happen if I go there. If there is trouble, it is not difficult for me to escape with my cultivation. But it is too dangerous for you to go with me. Remember what I said. Change your appearances and sneak to the Great Snow Mountain. Let Zhangjun meet you there. Chapter 11:07. In a rocky stream, there was no moonlight, but there was a cool breeze. Jin Taiwei glanced at them and guessed that they wanted to go their separate ways. With the current situation, this was not something he wanted to see. If he brought a few more people with him, they would be able to block the enemy at a critical moment. This was especially true for Bai Qi's loyal and brave subordinates, who were willing to sacrifice themselves to block the enemy at a critical moment. Even if they couldn't block the enemy, it would still be good if they could delay the enemy for a while. Bai Qi, take Qianjun and the others with you. We can take care of each other. Jin Tai interrupted with ulterior motives. Bai Qi glanced at him coldly and continued to transmit his voice to his 3 subordinates. The Snow Empress and her husband owe me a favor, and I trust their characters. Therefore, I've been saving this favor as a backup plan, and I haven't told anyone, and I haven't let anyone know about it. I'm preparing to use it at a critical moment. Now the situation is not in our favor. I vaguely feel that this matter is a bit sudden. There are too many factors involved in it. This matter should not be so simple. I am afraid that it will not end well. You have followed me for many years. Unfortunately, I have nothing left for you. I only hope that I can protect you as much as possible. After you reach the Great Snow Mountain, take out this ice talisman and ask for protection. The Snow Empress and her husband will arrange a place for you. Although the cultivation of the Snow Empress and her husband is not very strong, they have the Great Snow Mountain to rely on. Not many people have the ability to break into the Great Snow Mountain and make things difficult for them. Unless someone can destroy the Great Snow Mountain that has existed for countless years, even if the Snow Empress and her husband are no match for them, they should have no problem to hide. In addition, they have 800,000 Ice Soul Profound soldiers under their command. With their protection, you should be very safe in the Great Snow Mountain. Seeing that they were eager to express their opinions, Bai Qi raised his hand to stop them. Don't say anything else. Listen to my arrangements. Now that they've revealed all their trump cards, I'm already prepared. At the very least, there isn't anyone in the 3 realms that can stop me if I want to flee. I'm just going to see if there's any room to turn the situation around. If it's possible, I'll naturally summon all of you to help me. If it doesn't work, I won't go to my death. I'll go to the Great Snow Mountain to look for you. That's settled. You can go. Waving his hand at the 3 of them, he resolutely turned around and snorted at Kim Tae, whose eyes were flickering with uncertainty. Let's go. The Silver Armor Army, the Purple Armor Army, and the Blue Armor Army all knelt down on one knee in unison. They tried their best to suppress their excitement as they saluted, "Farewell, Underworld Emperor." When they raised their heads again, the figure in front of them had already disappeared, and two flowing lights, one gold and one white, disappeared on the horizon. A flying shuttle was flying toward the Minghuang Mountain at a moderate speed. Along the way, they would occasionally bump into large groups or small groups of people chasing and killing each other, making them feel that the netherworld was already in chaos. Nie Xiaoqian and the others didn't want to encounter any trouble on the way, so they had already changed their conspicuous golden robes. The flying shuttle didn't dare to fly too fast. Firstly, it was afraid of attracting too much attention. Secondly, Nie Xiaoqian and the others were constantly observing their surroundings. Because they didn't know Kim Tae's exact location, they couldn't communicate with him through voice transmissions, so they could only rely on their eyesight to carefully search for him. None of this had anything to do with Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was still using his old habits, sitting at the back of the group and thinking about his own matters. In the end, she actually walked to the back of the group and sat next to Yu Qianqiu. However, what made him depressed was that Qingyang kept glancing at him from time to time. What was even more excessive was that she didn't seem to enjoy looking at him from afar. In the end, she leisurely walked to the back and bent down to sit next to Yu Qianqiu. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. From time to time, everyone would glance behind them. This was because everyone who knew Qingyang knew that this woman didn't care about ordinary men at all, let alone sitting next to a stranger. In this way, it immediately attracted everyone's attention. From time to time, they would look back, because those who knew Qingyang all knew that this woman didn't care about ordinary men at all, let alone a stranger who was sitting shoulder to shoulder with her. Especially Nie Xiaoqian's eyes, which were unscrupulously looking back and forth between the two of them, were full of suspicion. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting on pins and needles, had a vague feeling that Qingyang might have recognized him, but for some reason, she couldn't be sure. After all, the two of them had been dancing together for a few days. Not only were they very familiar with each other's body shape, eyes, and ears, they could even recognize each other's body odor. After thinking this through, Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. Since he had already started, he decided to just go with the flow. He moved his body to the side, not letting Qingyang see his face, and lied down, pretending to sleep. In the end, he really did fall asleep. His dreams were filled with scenes of him and Qingyang dancing naked in the Green Pear Palace and being scolded by her. After an unknown amount of time, the speed of the flying shuttle suddenly decreased. Yu Qianqiu immediately woke up from his muddle-headedness. Hearing the sounds of fierce fighting, he immediately sat up. Nie Xiaoqian quickly walked forward and asked in a low voice, "What's wrong?" And Gao, who was driving the flying shuttle, pointed forward and said, "There are thousands of people fighting in front of us. Should we go around them?" Everyone looked over and saw a wide canyon between two towering mountains in front of them. Thousands of people were fighting in the canyon. The group that had the advantage in numbers looked like the Netherworld's Dark Nether Army from their clothes. The battle looked more like a siege battle between the Dark Nether Army and the Dark Nether Army. "Let's avoid the Dark Nether Army as much as possible." Nie Xiaoqian thought for a moment, then waved her hand and pointed at the towering mountain on the left, saying, "Go around the mountain on the left." And Gao obeyed and quickly drove the flying shuttle to the mountain on the left. When the battle in the canyon disappeared from everyone's sight, the flying shuttle had just gone around the back of the mountain and was about to speed up, but suddenly a streak of light flew over from the mountain and blocked the flying shuttle's path. The flying shuttle abruptly stopped. A woman in black with shoulder-length hair and half her face covered by a veil was blocking the way. Her deep gaze swept across everyone, causing everyone to become vigilant. Yu Qianqiu also quickly stood up. However, the people in front of him blocked his line of sight, so he naturally stepped on the horizontal board at the end of the shuttle that he had just been sitting on. He raised his head to take a look, but unexpectedly, his eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. His head shrank back, and he quickly sat back down. Qingyang, who was sitting next to him, frowned and stared at the place where he had just stepped on. It seemed that she was not used to his country bumpkin style. The black-clothed woman in front of them looked at Nia Xiaoqian's face and said indifferently, "So it's the Immortal Palace's chief steward, Nia. Long time no see." Everyone's eyes were fixed on Nia Xiaoqian. Nia Xiaoqian was slightly startled and seemed to remember something. She quickly cupped her hands in surprise and said, "So, it's the Saintess. Saintess, why are you here?" Based on everyone's experience, they immediately guessed that the person who had just arrived was the mysterious woman that the Underworld Emperor Bai Qi had called the Saintess of the Underworld. They couldn't help but look at her with great surprise. Qingyang was also curious to see what this legendary Saintess of the Underworld looked like. However, when she tilted her head slightly, she found that Yu Qianshou was sitting motionlessly like an old monk in meditation. She suppressed the urge to stand up and take a look. Most of the people present had never seen the Saintess of the Underworld before, so it was not strange that they didn't recognize her. However, when Ye Xiaoqian followed Jin Tai to fight the myriad swords demon monarch in the human world, she had seen the Saintess of the Underworld several times. She had seen the immortal Emperor Jin Tai and the Underworld Emperor Bai Qi treat this mysterious woman with respect. With Jin Tai's arrogant attitude, even he had to be respectful, so she naturally didn't dare to be disrespectful. The Saintess quietly replied, "I will wait here for the Underworld Emperor's arrival." Her gaze swept across everyone's faces as if she was examining something. Everyone looked at each other, but Nie Xiaoqian revealed a joyful expression and said, "Saintess, you mean to say that the Underworld Emperor will pass by this place?" The reason for her happiness was very simple. With the situation at this point, the Underworld Emperor and the Immortal Emperor would definitely be together. If the Underworld Emperor came, then the Immortal Emperor would naturally come as well. The Saintess didn't reply to her. Instead, she lightly approached the flying shuttle and floated to the side of the flying shuttle. She looked at everyone with a scrutinizing gaze. Just as she was feeling a little disappointed, she suddenly saw a man and a woman nestled at the back of the flying shuttle. The woman was curiously looking at her, while the man was sneaking glances at her from time to time, like a thief, as if he was afraid of her approaching. The Saintess' gaze paused on Yu Qianshou's face for a moment. Then she looked at everyone again. In the end, she didn't find the person she was looking for. Just as she was about to turn around and leave with a strange frown, she suddenly exclaimed in surprise. She abruptly turned around and looked at Yu Qianshou again. Her eyes slightly emitted a strange black splendor, and her pair of eyes seemed to become even more profound. "Bitch, have you never seen a man before?" Yu Qianshou looked down at the floor and cursed in his heart. The black splendor in the Saintess' eyes suddenly disappeared. She looked at Yu Qianshou in a daze, and no one knew what she was thinking. No one else knew, but her mouth slightly formed a circle under the black veil. Everyone's gaze kept moving between her and Yu Qianshou. They didn't know what the Saintess was trying to do. Only the great bright wheel's heart began to race. After the Saintess' misty eyes returned to normal, she lightly floated to the back of the flying shuttle. Yu Qianshou, who had his head lowered, suddenly noticed that there was a pair of black boots in front of him. Moreover, it was the style of a woman. He couldn't help but slowly raise his head, and his eyes met with the slightly lowered head of the Saintess. Yu Qianshou's expression stiffened. He coughed and pretended to casually tilt his head to the left. However, he discovered that Qingyang was staring at him with wide eyes. It was obvious that he was looking in the wrong direction. Thus, he coughed again and tilted his head to the right, pretending to look at the pitch-black scenery outside. Chapter 1108. However, to everyone's surprise, the Netherworld Saintess raised her leg and gently nudged his leg, indicating for him to sit a little further in. Yu Qianshou raised his head in surprise and obediently moved his butt in. As a result, he bumped into Qingyang's butt. The Netherworld Saintess' name caused Qingyang to cooperate and move her, but further out. Finally, there was a small empty space at the end of the shuttle, and the Netherworld Saintess sat down without any hesitation. What did it mean to be on pins and needles? Yu Qianqiu now had another understanding of the situation. The situation was like this. There were 3 people in the small space, and 2 women were sandwiching a man in the middle. In fact, the 2 women knew him, and he also knew the 2 women. However, he had changed his appearance and wanted to pretend that he didn't know the 2 women. However, the 2 women seemed to recognize him, and he had to pretend that he didn't know them. Thus, the 2 women began to push him left and right. There was also a group of people watching the show with surprised expressions. They thought that he had done something to the 2 women, but in fact, he hadn't done anything to them. Nie Xiaoqian and the others looked at the 3 people in the back with suspicious eyes. They couldn't figure out what the 3 people were doing. Could it be that there was a place with good feng shui behind them? Or could it be that Niu Yu's charm was limitless and women fell in love at first sight? Even if it was a place with good feng shui, even if Niu Yu's charm was limitless, there was no need to do this in front of everyone, right? Yu Qianqiu straightened his back and sat there motionlessly. At this moment, he couldn't find even the slightest bit of feeling like he was hugging a woman on his left and right. There were still faint sounds of fighting coming from the canyon on the other side of the mountain, but aside from the sound of the wind, it was eerily quiet here. Under everyone's gaze, Yu Qianqiu swallowed with difficulty. Just as he was about to stand up, a hand suddenly reached out from his right and stopped him from getting up. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around and saw that the underworld saintess was looking at him with a profound gaze. He immediately confirmed that the other party had recognized him. Hence, his shoulders and waist slumped as he shamelessly sat between the 2 women. Who's afraid of who? After a while, Nie Xiaoqian walked through the crowd and came to the back. She cupped her hands to the saintess of the underworld and asked, "Saintess, are you going to wait here for the underworld emperor?" The netherworld saintess nodded slightly and didn't say anything. Nie Xiaoqian said, "I understand." She looked at her daughter again and didn't know what she was doing. She then turned around and gave the others a look. Everyone turned around and didn't want to watch anymore. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt the pressure on him lessen significantly. He tilted his head to look at the netherworld saintess and transmitted his voice respectfully. "Saintess, what is your intention in doing this?" The saintess of the underworld also tilted her head to look at him and sent him a telepathic message. "Yu Qianqiu, you are so capricious. You were dressed like a barbarian before. I almost didn't recognize you. I almost let you go for nothing." Yu Qianqiu refused to admit his mistake. "Saintess, have you mistaken me for someone else? My name is Niu Yu, not Yu Qianqiu." The underworld saintess blinked her eyes and said, "You can hide it from others, but how can you hide it from me? You should know that I am proficient in divination and can see many things that others can't. How can your little tricks fool my eyes? Do you want me to expose your true colors in front of everyone? Hee. No wonder you are the saintess of the underworld. I can't fool you." Yu Qianqiu snorted. He was a little displeased by the other party's belittling and threatening words. It's not a big deal to be proficient in divination. Take me, for example. Although I'm also proficient in divination, I always keep a low profile and never show it off in front of others. I think it's meaningless to do so. To put it bluntly, it's just vulgar. Oh, for what you said, it seems that you're also proficient in divination. I really can't see it. If there is a chance, I want to see it. The saintess of the underworld's tone was somewhat sarcastic. Yu Qianqiu had set a trap for her to fall into. He expected that she would say this, so he asked, "If you really want to see it, I can show you a few of my skills since there is nothing to do now. I'm just afraid that it will scare you." "Scare me? Not to that extent. I will wait and see." The saintess of the underworld looked around as if she wanted to choose someone for Yu Qianqiu to read their fortune. Unexpectedly, she found that her hand was grabbed by someone. She looked back coldly and saw Yu Qianqiu rubbing one of her hands. He even had a greasy smile on his face, revealing a very wretched look. She had never been treated so disrespectfully before. She immediately said in a cold tone, "Are you courting death?" Qing Yang, who had been silently observing the actions of the two, was stunned. From their expressions, she could tell that the two of them seemed to be conversing with each other through voice transmissions. She never would have thought that the fellow beside her would actually do something like profaning the underworld saintess. She could already see the murderous intent in the underworld saintess' eyes, but the fellow was still smiling shamelessly. Didn't you want to see my divination skills? It's best to use you to verify it. You should know whether or not your divination is accurate. Otherwise, you will say that I'm talking nonsense. Why are you looking at me like that? If you don't want to, just say it. However, I will say this in advance. You were the one who went back on your words, not me. Yu Qinsho spoke righteously, but there was a lewd smile on his face, purposely trying to disgust the other party. He was overjoyed in his heart and sighed inwardly. Dealing with this kind of woman who was used to being high and mighty. If you don't suppress the east wind, her west wind will suppress your east wind. You can't always be nice to her. When it's time to take care of her, you have to take care of her. Don't be fooled by his complacent appearance. In fact, he knew his own capabilities best. If he hadn't gone to the all-heavens boundary and learned some secrets, he wouldn't have dared to bully the underworld saintess like this. Even if he was given 100 times more courage, he wouldn't have dared to do so. However, the underworld saintess thought that Yu Qinsho was deliberately advancing in order to retreat. If she refused now, the other party would naturally take advantage of her. Even if she took care of him, he would still be in the right. Thus, she resisted the urge to slap Yu Qinsho to death. She clenched her teeth and transmitted her voice. Is there anyone who divines like you? Yu Qinsho grabbed her hand, which was gradually becoming a little tense, and continued to touch her wrist. As he touched it, he laughed shamelessly and said, "To think that you are proficient in the art of divination. There are tens of thousands of techniques that you need to know, and they all return to the origin. Could it be that you don't know that there is a technique in the art of divination called bone feeling? A person's fate is, in fact, predestined in the unseen world. Then, how can it be reflected? It is reflected in a person's bone texture." The saintess was slightly stunned by his words. Although she didn't know how to touch bones, she was, after all, proficient in this field. Not only did Yu Qinsho's words make sense, but some of them were indeed reasonable in the art of divination. It didn't seem like he was talking nonsense. However, the lewd smile on his face, which was like that of a prostitute, was really unbearable. The most hateful thing was that his so-called bone touching, no matter how she looked at it, seemed like he was molesting a good woman. After touching for so long, what did you find? The saintess's tone was so gloomy that ice water could be wrung out of it. She suddenly withdrew her hand and subconsciously looked at the people standing in front of her, afraid that they would see her. Fortunately, everyone was facing forward to show respect to her, the saintess of the underworld. Only the woman at the side was stunned. Little did she know, if everyone was watching, Yu Qinsho might not have dared to do this. Of course, this guy couldn't be judged by common sense. Perhaps he would dare to do such a despicable thing in front of everyone. In reality, he was thick-skinned and black-hearted. There was nothing he didn't dare to do. Everything depended on the situation. I only touched for so long, and I only touched one palm. What did I find? Yu Qinsho complained weakly. The saintess suddenly looked over and said with a cold and stern voice, "Then, how much longer do you want to touch? Where else do you want to touch? If you can't say anything, believe it or not, I will immediately chop off your hands." What a joke. I will let you see my divine foresight. Yu Qinsho chuckled in his heart, but his expression turned solemn as he replied, "Since that's the case, then I'll have to embarrass myself. If I've miscalculated in any way, please forgive me." You want me to forgive you if you are wrong? The saintess of the underworld was instantly angry. She gnashed her teeth and emphasized word by word. "If you are wrong, I will chop off your dog hands." I will try my best." Yu Qinsho pretended to touch his chin and rolled his eyes as he pondered. Then, he explained seriously, "From the bone pattern on your palm and your current identity, the Emperor of the Underworld by Qi is the supreme master of the underworld, but he regards you as the saintess of the underworld and will probably listen to everything you say. Therefore, you have a faint air of the overlord of the underworld. If I am not wrong, there should be a word overlord in your name. Am I right? The saintess of the underworld trembled all over. She looked at Yu Qianqiu in a daze. After a moment of silence, she didn't say whether Yu Qianqiu was right or not. She just gnashed her teeth and said, "Continue to calculate." Yu Qianqiu wasn't in a hurry to force her to give him an answer. Jiang Hu's game was a psychological tactic, so he could take it slowly. He rubbed his chin and began to shake his head and roll his eyes. From the bone pattern on your palm, in my calculation, ordinary experts who are proficient in divination know that the mysteries of heaven can't be revealed. But you're doing the opposite, forcing me to tell you the result of touching the bone. In fact, this already contains a certain principle of fate. You want me to tell you the result of my calculation. What does it mean? It means that you want me to announce it to the public. Then, what I'm doing to you now can only be summed up in one word, which is announce. It means that I am now revealing the mystery to you. So, there must be a word announce in your name. Am I right? Chapter 1109. Was there need to ask? Even if he didn't touch her hand and didn't deliberately disgust her, he was sure that he was right. However, the underworld saintess didn't think so. Ever since she walked out of the all-heavens boundary, she hadn't told anyone her name. It had been so long that she had almost forgotten what her name was. It was even more impossible for people outside the all-heavens boundary to know her name. If it was a coincidence that Yu Qianqiu got one word right, then why did he get two words right in a row? What convinced her most was that Yu Qianqiu's calculation was reasonable and convincing, and it didn't seem like a blind guess at all. Most importantly, Yu Qianqiu's calculations were correct. Her name really did have the characters Tai and Xian in it. This was definitely not something that could be found through simple guesses and guesses. Although she was proficient in the art of divination, she was frankly shocked, very shocked. She never dreamed that Yu Qianqiu would have this skill. Not only did she look at him in a new light, but she also suddenly felt that this Yu Qianqiu was somewhat unfathomable. Thinking that she couldn't see through his fate, it was naturally not surprising that he had some hidden skills. Therefore, she was even more certain that he was the person she was looking for. How could she know that Yu Qianqiu had mingled with people from all walks of life in his previous life? What kind of tricks had he not seen? It was as easy as a knife cutting tofu to fool a person with little experience like her. Especially with his eloquence, even a veteran of the Jianghu would inevitably fall for it. Seeing that the other party was shocked by his fortune-telling skill and couldn't speak for a long time, looking at him with extremely complicated emotions, Yu Qianqiu immediately squeezed out an unfathomable smile, but his eyes were maliciously glancing from her face to her chest, wondering which place to touch next. What else? The underworld saintess suppressed her emotions and asked, Yu Qianqiu recovered from his imagination and casually said, "Your name is 3 words. Why do you say that?" Her tone was no longer as harsh as before. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. Just as he was about to display the divine quintessence of blind fortune-telling that he learned in his previous life, he realized that something was amiss. His eyeballs immediately drooped down, and he said helplessly, "Do you think I'm an idiot? Was there even a need to calculate this? You've already said that there's more. Since there's more, it's naturally 3 words. It seems like there are quite a few people with 4-character names, right?" The netherworld saintess sneered. Yu Qianqiu realized that he couldn't justify himself. He immediately took out his special skill of fortune-telling for the saintess of the underworld and changed the topic. From the bone texture on your palm and my calculation, your name is 3 words. Am I right? The underworld saintess was shocked by his words again. She was stunned for a moment and then asked, "Since you said it's 3 words, why don't you calculate the word in the middle?" She was like a dead duck that was asking for trouble. She refused to admit that Yu Qianqiu's calculation was correct. She had no one to blame but herself for being tricked. Earlier, I had only touched it for a short period of time, so I did not manage to get a clear grasp of it. I was only able to calculate out 2 characters. If you let me touch it again, I should be able to calculate it out, Yu Qianqiu said, appearing somewhat troubled. This person, his curiosity mustn't be aroused. Otherwise, if he was seduced halfway, how would he be able to deal with it so easily? The Netherworld Saintess bit her red lips under her veil. She took the initiative to bring the hand that was touched to Yu Qianqiu. The fingers were slender, and the skin was snow white. They actually trembled slightly. Embarrassed, Yu Qianqiu grabbed them and touched them repeatedly. The Netherworld Saintess actually took the initiative to let this guy touch her hand. Qingyang, who was silently observing the two's actions, opened her mouth slightly. Her face was filled with disbelief. She now had 10,000 reasons to believe that this man and woman must have been together for a long time. The so-called blind man naturally had his own way of fortune-telling. Otherwise, how could he make a living? Yu Qianqiu touched her hand, and his heart bloomed with joy. He couldn't help but think back to the time when he found the same blind man to read his fortune for 3 consecutive days. He remembered that the blind man was really blind. He was so eloquent that he almost fooled a veteran in the pugilistic world. Later on, he kept an eye out and changed his identity to find the blind man to read his fortune for 3 consecutive days. In the end, the blind man told 3 different fortunes in 3 days. Furthermore, each time, he felt like he was convinced. He was too good at fooling people. Who would have thought that he wasn't angry? Instead, he was shocked. He directly invited the blind man back with a high salary. He was given good food and drinks, and a few beauties served him. In the end, the blind man didn't disappoint him. He was loyal and devoted. At the crucial moment, he would appear and perform miraculous deeds for him. He became his right-hand man. After he died, Yu Qianqiu didn't know how the blind man was doing. He missed him so much. After touching her hand for a while, he thought that with the previous deceit as a foundation, it was time to let the other party know his abilities. He rolled his eyes and said with certainty, "Uncle, there's one more word that is uncle. Your full name is Tai Shu Xian." His black eyeballs drooped down as he stared at the other party and asked, "Am I right?" Although he asked, his face was filled with great confidence in his bone-touching divination art. Actually, when she had calculated the first 2 words, she was already mentally prepared. When she heard that her full name was really out, the Netherworld Saintess was very calm this time. She slowly pulled her hand back and said coldly, "The bull's head doesn't match the horse's mouth. Not a single word is correct. This is not my name at all. Your so-called mastery of divination is only SOSO. Impossible." Yu Qianqiu denied it on the spot, cursing the dead duck's stubbornness in his heart. Then, he used his voice to refute, "My fortune-telling art has never failed before. Forget a name. If it weren't for the fact that you're a woman, I would have even divined the names of 8 generations of your ancestors for you. I would have even divined the fate of your past life." The Netherworld Saintess was stunned. She admitted that she didn't have the ability to calculate the names of other people's 8 generations of ancestors, but she didn't think that Yu Qianqiu was bragging. She just asked with a voice transmission with a puzzled look in her eyes, "What does this have to do with whether I'm a woman or not?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze stopped at her chest. He coldly snorted and said, "If you weren't a woman, I would be able to feel your father's name from your left sternum and your mother's name from your right sternum. If I felt your entire body, you wouldn't be able to hide your fate from me even if you wanted to. You are a woman, and I am a man. How can I touch your body so casually?" The expression under the black veil twitched. She clenched her teeth and remained silent for a long time. Then, she said the word shameless. She didn't say anything else, which made Yu Qianqiu's evil intentions fail. Yu Qianqiu was a well-educated man, so he wouldn't force himself to touch her. However, there was a puzzled look on his face. He didn't know why this Netherworld Saintess wanted to sit next to him. Was it just because she recognized him? The fighting noises in the valley gradually disappeared. Then there was the sound of a large number of people flying away. The surroundings suddenly fell into a dead silence. A few hours later, two beams of light flew over the two people's heads at an incredible speed. By the time they realized what was going on, the two beams of light had returned. Obviously, they had discovered them. Jintai and Bai Qi appeared not far from the flying shuttle. Everyone was overjoyed and bowed. "Greetings, immortal emperor! Greetings, emperor of the underworld!" Qingyang also stood up and bowed. Only the netherworld saintess and Yu Qianshou remained motionless. Now that the World Commerce Association of Yu Qianshou had collapsed and his subordinates had left the immortal realm, he didn't have to worry about being restrained. He didn't care if they were the immortal emperor or the emperor of the underworld. Jintai and Bai Qi looked at the two motionless people and glanced at each other. Then, they landed on the flying shuttle and politely cupped their hands towards the netherworld saintess. Bai Qi bitterly smiled and said, "I heard from Qianjun that the saintess had secretly left the underworld royal palace a few days before the war broke out. It seems that the saintess had already predicted this calamity." Jintai indifferently snorted and said, "So what if she predicted it? Didn't your underworld royal palace still perish?" He was clearly unhappy that the netherworld saintess didn't warn him in advance. The might of the heavens is hard to predict. No one can see the trend of the heavenly Tao. Who can go against the trend of the heavens? They can only go with the flow. If it wasn't for this, why would I be trapped in the mortal world for 100,000 years? The netherworld saintess glanced at the two and said, "Under the might of the heavens, I am like a small boat in a raging river. I can't stop anything. It is already not bad that I could reach the shore in the midst of the raging waves." Jintai coldly snorted. If the might of the heavens is hard to predict, then why did the saintess avoid the disaster in advance? If I could predict the movement of the might of the heavens, then I would be the heavenly Tao. I just happened to avoid this disaster because I wanted to find someone. This is fate. The netherworld saintess lightly waved her hand and said, "If I didn't deliberately delay here for a while, I'm afraid the two of you would have already encountered Wang Qing. There's no point in reasoning with people like you." Jintai flew into a rage, but Bai Qi quickly blocked him. Looking at Yu Qianshou, who was sitting together with the netherworld saintess, he was slightly surprised. He squinted his eyes and asked, "This friend's face is covered with something. It seems like he doesn't want to show his face. I wonder if he is an old acquaintance of Bai Qi?" Jintai immediately looked over and coldly snorted, "Hiding your head and hiding your tail. One look and I can tell that you are hiding something." The others were slightly shocked as they looked at Yu Qianshou. They didn't have Jintai and Bai Qi's microscopic vision that could see through the human skin mask. Qingyang's expression shook. Her eyes flickered as she stared at Yu Qianshou. She was more and more convinced of her guess. De Minglun quickly came out and cupped his hands at Jintai. "Immortal Emperor, please calm your anger. This person was sent by an old friend of mine to inform this subordinate. It was precisely because of his timely report that this subordinate was saved from danger." Jintai glanced at the others. Seeing Xiaoqian nod in agreement, he shouted, "Then let him take off his mask." Yu Qianshou was just about to take de Minglun and leave when the netherworld saintess quietly said, "He is my subordinate. I don't think he needs to listen to you, right?" Chapter 11:10. The great Minglun, who had received Yu Qianshou's secret message, also felt that it was inappropriate to stay here for Yu Qianshou's safety. However, when he heard the underworld saintess's words, he felt that there was still a chance. So he asked Yu Qianshou to wait for an opportunity. Jintai raised his sword-like eyebrows and stared at the underworld saintess with a murderous look. "You shameless bitch. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you?" Bai Qi frowned slightly. He stood in front of Jintai and said sternly, "Jintai, what do you want to do? Now is not the time to have internal strife." "You want to have internal strife just because I killed her?" Jintai stared at Bai Qi coldly and snorted. "Are you going to fall out with me because of her?" Bai Qi So what if you have served this bitch for so many years? So what if I have always been respectful to her? Your underworld royal palace and my immortal palace will collapse just like that. What's the use of keeping this bitch? In one sentence, he revealed the reason why he was respectful to her. I have never expected you to be respectful to others from the bottom of your heart. I am not surprised that you have said this. The underworld saintess slowly stood up and turned to look at the distant night sky. She gave people a feeling of emptiness and said lightly, "If I'm not wrong, you should want to go to the immortal world to find someone to help you out of your predicament. Jin Tai, if you dare to touch me, I won't say that you can't find the person you are looking for, but at least I will make you die without a burial place." Just you? Jin Tai snorted disdainfully, but his eyes slightly glanced at Bai Qi. He saw that Bai Qi was looking at the underworld saintess with a surprised expression. It seemed that he did not secretly reveal to the underworld saintess that he was going to the immortal world's ancient forest. Jin Tai was secretly shocked and dispelled the idea of being too presumptuous. The underworld saintess tilted her head and looked at him and said indifferently, "You can try and touch me. Okay, we should be in the same boat at this time. Don't quarrel over such a small matter." It could be said that Bai Qi understood Jin Tai better, so he quickly spoke up to be the peacemaker. Jin Tai just coldly snorted and followed Bai Qi's way down the slope, not mentioning the matter of Yu Qianqiu again. The others remained silent and didn't say anything. Bai Qi glanced at Yu Qianqiu, who was still sitting motionlessly. He didn't see any part of him that looked like a subordinate of the underworld saintess. He turned to Nie Xiaoqian and said, "You drive the flying shuttle to the ancient forest in the immortal world." An ancient forest in the immortal world? Yu Qianqiu, who had been maintaining his vigilance, was startled. He immediately thought of the person that Wei Chunqiu had mentioned from the underworld saintess words. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, could it be that Bai Qi and Jin Tai are looking for Wei Chunqiu's grandfather to come out and help? Thinking of this, he immediately had the intention to follow and see what was going on. He was not in a hurry to leave. Nie Xiaoqin glanced at Jin Tai. Seeing that her master had no intention of objecting, she immediately said, "Yes." Taking over in Gao's role, the flying shuttle turned into a stream of light and flew away. No one on the flying shuttle spoke. The netherworld saintess tilted her head to look at Yu Qianqiu, who seemed to be thinking of something, and sat down next to him. It was not convenient for Qingyang to sit down in front of the immortal emperor, so the man and woman sitting at the back were no longer crowded. Bai Qi turned back to look at the two of them, but didn't say anything. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting next to the netherworld saintess, transmitted his voice and asked, who were they going to the ancient forest in the immortal world to find? He wanted to confirm his guess. "I don't know." The netherworld saintess answered very straightforwardly. Yu Qianqiu choked for a while. "Didn't you calculate that they are going to the immortal world to find someone to help them get out of their predicament? I only roughly calculated some of their movements. If I can even calculate what they're going to do, or who they are looking for, then doesn't that mean I can control everyone's fate?" The netherworld saintess looked at him and asked, "Could it be that your bone-touching fortune-telling technique is so amazing?" Although she refused to openly admit that Yu Qianqiu had the ability to tell fortunes, her words undoubtedly showed that she really believed him. Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment, his gaze landing on her face that was half covered by a black veil. He was very curious about what the face behind the black veil looked like. Blinking his eyes, he shamelessly replied, "Of course. If you let me carefully touch your face, I'll be able to calculate who you're looking for and what you're doing." In his heart, he added, "I've long since calculated that you want to find the devil god for revenge." He was making irresponsible remarks, but the netherworld saintess was frightened by his accurate name. Her eyes flashed as she looked at Bai Qi and Jin Tai, and she changed the topic. "Since you are so clever, why do you still ask me? Why don't you just calculate for them and find out who they are looking for?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said in confusion, "I say, Taishu Xian, do you think Jin Tai and Bai Qi will let me touch their faces? My name is not Taishu Xian. You are wrong." The Netherworld Saintess said this and didn't say anything. So Yuchincho's fortune-telling magic was stuck in his mouth and couldn't be used after crossing the underworld and entering the immortal world, because they had to avoid as many people as possible, and at the same time, they had to hide. So even though Nie Xiaoqian personally drove the flying shuttle at an extremely fast speed, it still took them half a month to finally enter a vast forest, which was their destination. Finally, they arrived at the ancient forest of the Wood Fairy province. Although they were still at the periphery of the ancient forest, they could see towering trees everywhere. The forest was dark, and the sporadic light from the sunlight dotted the surroundings. The old trees and vines were entangled, and the ground was covered with thick, rotten leaves. You could hear the rustling sound when you stepped on it. The 11 people quickly looked around, and they all knew that there were countless plant spirits in this ancient forest. Finally, their eyes all focused on Jin Tai. Except for Yuchincho, who could guess most of it. No one else knew who Jin Tai was looking for. Jin Tai, where's the person you were talking about? Bai Qi asked, floating 1 foot above the ground. His bare feet obviously didn't want to step on the rotten leaves on the ground. He should be in this ancient forest. Jin Tai's eyes flickered as he looked into the depths of the forest. Then he asked Nie Xiaoqian to give him 10 jade talismans. Holding them together in his palm, 10 faint golden light flowed out of his palm and seeped into the 10 jade talismans. He then gently waved his hand, and the 10 jade talismans flew in front of the 10 people. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what Jin Tai was doing. One by one, they grabbed the jade talismans in front of them. Bai Qi stretched out 2 slender fingers and held the jade talismans in front of him. He repeatedly checked the jade talismans in front of him and frowned. Jin Tai, what do you mean by this? Jin Tai waved his arm and pointed around and said arrogantly, everyone split up and search in the ancient forest. If you see an old guy with a wooden staff, he should be the person we're looking for. Immediately crush the communication talisman in your hand to summon me. Nie Xiaoqian and the other immortal palace remnants paused for a moment, but they still saluted in unison. Yes, immortal emperor. Bai Qi looked at Jin Tai, and his expression twitched a little. He said in a deep voice, Jin Tai, are you kidding me? You don't even know where the person is, and you brought me here? The entire ancient forest is so big. Trying to find a person here aimlessly is like looking for a needle in a haystack. How do you want us to find him? Jin Tai immediately looked at him and said indifferently, do you have a better way? At least it's better than your stupid way. Bai Qi looked around the depths of the forest coldly and said, there are many plants in this ancient forest. As long as you catch a few and ask them, you will naturally find the person you are looking for. Oomph. Kintai coldly snorted and said, I don't know how many times I've used this clever method of yours, but it's completely useless. Even in the ancient forest, that old fellow's traces are elusive. Even if it's the grass demons that live here all year round, they at most know of the existence of such a person, but no one knows where he is. As soon as these words came out, everyone felt that it was even more difficult to find him. Bai Qi paused and suddenly revealed a ruthless expression. Desperate times call for desperate measures. We can't care so much anymore. Set fire to the forest, and we will be able to force him out. If he really can help us like you said, even if we make a big commotion and alarm our opponents, we don't have to be afraid. Set fire to the ancient forest? Jin Tai's slender eyes flashed, and he said sarcastically, this is a good idea, but I'm afraid that even if we force him out, not only will he not help us, but he will also take both of our lives. Do you think that our current opponents are not strong enough? Hearing this, Bai Qi remembered that the person they were looking for was probably the Wood Spirit, one of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth. Setting fire to the Wood Spirit's territory might really anger the Wood Spirit. Seeing that Bai Qi didn't say anything, Jin Tai glanced at the others and said, let's split up and search. We will have a higher chance of finding him. After saying that, he turned into a beam of light and flew into the depths of the forest, seeming to be a bit impatient. The remnants of the immortal palace obeyed and scattered in the dark forest. Before Qin Yang left, she looked at Yu Qianqiu and wanted to say something, but she stopped for a while. She saw that Yu Qianqiu was holding the big bright wheel, and the Emperor of the Underworld and the Saintess of the Underworld were still there. She couldn't say anything, so she turned around and flew into the forest. Who knew that not long after she flew into the forest, her mother, Nie Xiaoqian, flashed to her side. Nie Xiaoqian was obviously worried about her inexperienced daughter risking her life in the ancient forest alone, so the two of them left together. In reality, everyone knew that the wood spirits in the ancient forest weren't just for show. There were many unknown dangers hidden in the depths of the forest. The four scattered commanders also coincidentally met up not far away. It wasn't that they didn't want to obey the immortal emperor's decree, it was just a coincidence. Thus, the four of them split into two groups, and the distance between the two groups wasn't too far. Big bright wheel. My cultivation level is low, so I'll have to trouble you to take care of me. Yu Qianqiu grabbed the big bright wheel's sleeve with a smile, and the big bright wheel nodded graciously. Just as the two of them were about to leave together, they heard the Saintess of the Underworld suddenly shout, "Niu Yud, you are my subordinate, so naturally, I will be the one to take care of you." She also flashed over. Bai Qi, who was floating barefoot, looked at the three of them and sneered. He indifferently interjected, "Jean Tai's already left. Do you three still want to put on an act in front of me? Yu Qianqiu, we haven't seen each other for a long time." Chapter 11:11. The three of them looked back at the same time. Yu Qianqiu showed a puzzled expression, looking at the underworld saintess, Taishu Xian, and then at the great bright wheel, but not at himself. Of course, it was inconvenient for him to look at himself, as he didn't seem to know who Yu Qianqiu was talking about. Bai Qi stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was pretending to be ignorant, and said with a faint smile, "Yu Qianqiu, do you really want me to tear off the mask on your face to see you?" The great bright wheel's expression changed slightly, but the underworld saintess, Taishu Xian, remained calm. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. With Bai Qi's cultivation, it shouldn't be difficult for him to see that he was wearing a mask, but he didn't believe that Bai Qi could see his face behind the mask. At most, he would be suspicious, and maybe he was trying to trick him. Yu Qianqiu pointed at his nose and asked, "Is the Emperor of the Underworld calling me? My name is Niu Yud. How could the Emperor of the Underworld mistake me for Yu Qianqiu?" He wouldn't give up until he reached the Yellow River. Mistake? Bai Qi snorted, feeling somewhat unhappy, but he still maintained his gentlemanly demeanor, pointing at Yu Qianqiu and saying with a smile, "If you were standing in front of me alone, I probably wouldn't think that you were Yu Qianqiu. The Great Bright Will has a close relationship with the two Yao cultivators of the World Chamber of Commerce, so he must have a close relationship with you as well. As for the minor immortal cultivator, who could be favored by the Saintess? I only heard her mention a fellow called Yu Qianqiu, and never heard her mention anyone else. Also, don't forget that we talked face-to-face in the Endless Cliffs. It's rare to see a minor immortal cultivator who needs my concentration to see their cultivation. It can't be that so many things happen at the same time, right? Yu Qianqiu, you can hide it from Lady Jean, but you can't hide it from me. I treated you with sincerity. Do you think it's necessary to hide it in front of me?" It turned out that there were so many flaws. It seemed like he had no choice but to admit it. Yu Qianqiu let out a bitter smile while rubbing his nose. He bowed to Bai Qi and said, "Emperor of the Underworld, please forgive me. I really had no choice. Yu Qianqiu knows his mistake." "It's good that you know your mistakes." Bai Qi glanced at the Underworld Saintess and easily forgave her. He smiled faintly and said, "Naturally, you have your reasons for hiding your true appearance. It has nothing to do with me, so I don't need to pursue it. But I think you don't want to see the heartless palace dominate the world, so we should try our best to find the person Jean Tai mentioned." As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately dashed into the dense forest. As expected, he did not pursue Yu Qianqiu. It seemed like he was trying to be friendly. The remaining three looked at each other in the forest. Deming Luan was not familiar with the underworld saintess, so he did not know what to say. He looked at Yu Qianqiu with a questioning gaze. Cuckoo. A few birds landed on the treetops, breaking the silence between the three. Yu Qianqiu glanced around and looked at the underworld saintess with a toothache. He said helplessly, Saintess, why are you following us instead of the emperor of the underworld? With our cultivation, we won't be able to protect you if we encounter danger. He also wanted to see what kind of person Luer's grandfather was, but he didn't want to bring this saintess along. Although he knew the background of this saintess, he didn't know what kind of person she was. If he got a woman with a venomous heart to stab him in the back, he would simply be finding trouble for himself. The underworld saintess Taishu Xian ignored Yu Qianqiu's words. Instead, she stared at Deming Luan and said, I have something to say to you, Qianqiu alone. You should go further away. There doesn't seem to be anything to talk about between us. Yu Qianqiu's words were cut off by Taishu Xian's determined gaze. He scratched his nose and smiled bitterly at Deming Luan. Wait for me at a place 10 li ahead. Deming Luan nodded, cupped his fists at the underworld saintess, and quickly left. After watching Deming Luan leave, Yu Qianqiu looked at the woman in front of him, scratched his head, and said, Speak. What do you want from me? My original name is Taishu Xian. You didn't miscalculate. Taishu Xian looked at him and said indifferently, Yu Qianqiu stared blankly for a moment. Looking around, there was no one around him. His eyes quickly turned as a series of thoughts flashed through his mind. Previously, he had been so stubborn, but now he was admitting it so easily. Not knowing what this woman wanted, he denied it immediately. Saintess, you misunderstand. I was just making it up. Don't take it seriously. You were able to guess my name just by making it up? Then I'll have to ask you to calculate it seriously. Taishu Xian didn't believe it at all. His name was considered rare. So how could it be made up so easily? She raised her hands to the back of her head, and the black sleeves on her arms slid down, revealing a pair of white arms. The black veil that had been covering her face was quietly taken off, revealing an exquisite and peerlessly beautiful face that even an angel would be ashamed of. She had a head full of black hair that cascaded down like a waterfall, and her snow-white skin was as smooth as jade. She was even more beautiful than Ji Wu. Her beauty was so shocking that it could stop the flow of time. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. His gaze was deeply immersed in that peerlessly beautiful face, and he couldn't pull himself away. Didn't you say that as long as I let you carefully feel the bones of my face, you'll be able to calculate who I'm looking for or what I'm doing? Taishu Xian's pair of beautiful eyes stared at him. The meaning behind her words was very clear. She was clearly asking Yu Qianqiu to use his bone-touching fortune-telling technique again. In fact, the reason why she was pestering Yu Qianqiu was very simple. Naturally, it wasn't because she was attracted to Yu Qianqiu's masculinity. She understood that with her cultivation talent, she would never be able to match a terrifying existence like the devil god. However, she couldn't find anyone with that ability, even after searching everywhere. On the contrary, when she talked about Yu Qianqiu with Bai Qi, she had a hint of understanding. Could it be that Yu Qianqiu and Bai Changchun, whose fate couldn't be seen clearly, were the people she was looking for? Although she couldn't be sure if it was those two people, she decided to start with Yu Qianqiu. Because Bai Changchun wasn't that easy to control, she decided to pester Yu Qianqiu. As a result, Yu Qianqiu's bone-touching fortune-telling technique shocked her. Listening to his words and observing his actions, it seemed that he was much stronger than her innate talent. At first, she was a little resistant and didn't want to let Yu Qianqiu touch the secrets in the depths of her heart. However, after thinking about it, she was extremely happy. Since Yu Qianqiu was so good at fortune-telling, he might be able to calculate who could help her take revenge. Therefore, this scene happened. Looking at the beautiful face in front of him, Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He thought to himself, Indeed, dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and mice give birth to children that know how to dig holes. No wonder she was the daughter of Ming, who could attract the devil god and the ancestor of all demons at the same time. The genes that she was born with couldn't be erased. From this, it could be seen how beautiful Ming was in the past. The beauty in front of him made Yu Qianzhou's fingers twitch. He rubbed his hands and smiled awkwardly. Since it's the order of the Saintess, how can Yu Qianzhou dare to disobey? What he meant was, then I won't be polite. He pretended to be in a difficult position and strode over to her. Seeing him walking over, Taishu Xian's heart was also beating wildly. No man had ever touched her face. She bit her lips slightly and slowly closed her eyes. Yu Qianzhou, who was walking over, stretched out a finger to hook the beautiful jade-like jaw. A smile of success appeared on his face. In his mind, he was already thinking whether he should touch the soft and nice parts of the woman's body next. However, unfortunately, when he moved forward, a ray of sunlight shone through the shade of the trees and directly shone on his eyes. Disappointing, Yu Qianzhou tilted his head to avoid the dazzling sunlight. When his finger almost touched the other's chin, he looked at the delicate and beautiful face with closed eyes and suddenly paused. In his mind, Grandma Yan's earnest expectation in the boundary formation of heavens appeared. He had promised Taishu Xian that he would tell Taishu Xian that Grandma Yan missed her very much. Did he really want to take advantage of her for a moment of pleasure? Yu Qianzhou's outstretched hand slowly dropped down, and the snicker on his face gradually disappeared. Regardless of whether he would offend Taishu Xian by doing this, at least he could have a good relationship with Grandma Yan in the boundary formation of heavens. Maybe she could help him in the future. How could he lose the big picture because of small gain? Looking at Taishu Xian, who seemed to notice that something was wrong and was about to open her eyes, Yu Qianzhou took a step back and said with a wry smile, Taishu Xian, Grandma Yan misses you very much. Grandma Yan? Taishu Xian was very moved. She opened her eyes and said with a pair of beautiful eyes, This is also calculated by you? I don't count for anything. Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, I was just joking with you. I don't really know how to read fortunes. It's just that you haven't gone back to see Grandma Yan for so many years, so I'm just giving you a slight punishment. He first denied that he had taken advantage of Grandma Yan and said honestly, I have entered the boundary formation of heavens and met Grandma Yan. I have heard Grandma Yan talk about you. Impossible. How could you have passed through the boundary formation of heavens? Taishu Xian shook his head repeatedly to express his disbelief. Without a choice, Yu Qianzhou could only roughly explain the matter of him meeting Grandma Yan. However, he excluded the matter of finding by Changchun and Shunyu being able to enter and exit the boundary formation of heavens at will. After all, he didn't know Taishu Xian's character very well, so he didn't dare to reveal anything. Looking at Taishu Xian's expression, which showed that he had already believed him, Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, Taishu Xian, it's easier said than done to deal with the demonic god. Currently, the immortal realm and the netherworld are already in chaos. Although your cultivation is higher than mine, I'm afraid it's not enough to guarantee your own safety. You'd better go back. Grandma Yan really misses you. Go back, Taishu Xian muttered to himself in a daze. If I don't take revenge for my parents, how can I calm down and stay there? I have already conveyed Grandma Yan's words. It's up to you whether you want to go back or not. I can't force you. If you want to go back, just let me know. I will find a way to send you back. Think about it yourself. Yu Qianzhou looked at her, who was in a daze, and shrugged his shoulders. He left her alone and flashed towards the direction where the Great Bright Will had left. In the depths of the dense forest 10 miles away, the Great Bright Will was really waiting for him. When the two met, the Great Bright Will looked behind him and found that he was alone. It couldn't help but ask, You got rid of the Netherworld Saintess? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.